Introduction. You are drowning, not in water, but in the relentless tide of information, expectation, and manufactured desire. Your peace is not stolen. It is surrendered, piece by painstaking piece, to a world that profits from your unrest. Imagine a lone figure adrift, not in an ocean, but in a swirling sea of flickering screens and disembodied voices, each one a tendril pulling at their spirit. This is the silent war waged upon the inner sanctum of your being. Consider the very architecture of the human mind, an ancient instrument not designed for the ceaseless bombardment of the modern era. Our nervous systems, honed over millennia for acute threat detection and community connection, are now overstimulated, perpetually in a state of high alert. See the frantic dance of neurons, firing wildly in response to an unseen enemy, a stark contrast to the quiet contemplation of our ancestors beneath a starlit sky. This constant hypervigilance, born of endless notifications and the digital comparison game, mirrors the biological stress response of our earliest kin facing a saber-toothed cat. Yet the danger is invisible, insidious, and everywhere. Metaphysically, this incessant external pull fragments the very essence of self, scattering consciousness like dust in a digital storm, obscuring the clear light of your own innate wisdom. But within this maelstrom, a profound truth waits. It is not about escaping the world, but mastering the internal landscape, the sacred domain of your own being. The knowledge you seek, the wisdom to navigate this noise, is not a shield against the world's chaos, but a compass to chart your own unwavering course through it. Behold a majestic vessel, sailing calmly through turbulent waters, its mast unbending, guided by an unseen force within. To reclaim your mind is to reclaim your sovereignty. To understand the mechanisms of your own disquiet is to gain the ultimate key to an unshakable peace, a freedom no external force can diminish. This understanding is the bedrock of true liberation, allowing you to not merely exist, but to thrive, anchored in the profound stillness you already possess. Chapter 1. The Whisper of the Unseen, Unveiling Modern Chaos. A strange dissonance permeates the very fabric of existence. The grand symphony of human progress, once heralded as the ultimate orchestrator of a luminous future, now seems to play a profoundly discordant and unsettling tune. We stand at the zenith of technological prowess, our collective reach extending to the farthest corners of the cosmos. Our information flows instantaneous and boundless, promising an era of unprecedented clarity and connection. Yet, beneath this shimmering surface of relentless advancement, an undercurrent of profound disquiet grows stronger with each passing moment. It is not the ancient roar of visible, tangible threats that once defined human suffering, not the overt clash of empires or the famines that visibly ravaged lands and populations. This is a distinctly new breed of chaos, subtle as a creeping mist, yet pervasive and inescapable as the very air we are compelled to breathe. Consider, if you will, the profound paradox of this epoch. Never before has humanity possessed such a vast and readily accessible repository of knowledge, such sophisticated tools for instantaneous global communication, such an abundance of material comfort designed to alleviate every conceivable inconvenience. One might reasonably expect a corresponding and profound blossoming of inner tranquility, a collective exhale of deep contentment and security. Instead, a peculiar and insidious malady has taken root, intertwining itself with the very nervous system of modern life. A constant, low-frequency hum of anxiety vibrates through the unseen channels of the digital ether, an unspoken, persistent tension that tugs relentlessly at the periphery of every thought, every interaction, every quiet moment that might otherwise offer solace. Why then, in this age of unparalleled, instant connectivity, do so many sentient beings feel an ever-deepening chasm of profound disconnection, not only from one another, but from the very core of their own being? Why, amidst the ceaseless, overwhelming torrent of information, does genuine clarity of mind become an ever more elusive, almost mythical prize? The true answers, the keys to this escalating enigma, lie not in the obvious, superficial clamour of daily life, but in the subtle, pervasive whisper of the unseen. They reside in the insidious, almost imperceptible distortions of perception, the cleverly disguised narratives, and the ceaseless demands for attention that have been meticulously woven into the very architecture of our modern psychological and emotional landscape. It is this silent, relentless erosion of inner peace, this quiet dismantling of personal sovereignty, that now poses the most formidable and existential challenge to the human spirit. We must, therefore, dare to inquire into the very nature of this pervasive, unseen force, for only then can we begin to reclaim the profound stillness that is our birthright. The true genesis of this encroaching disorder, this subtle dissolution of equilibrium, lies in an understanding often eluded by the hurried gaze. It is not merely the clamour of information, a torrential downpour of data that overwhelms the senses, but rather the design of its delivery. Consider the digital echo chamber, a vast, self-reinforcing crucible forged not of metal and flame, but of algorithms and desire. Here, the subtle prompt, the fleeting notification, the curated feed, each acts as a miniature tide, gently then relentlessly, pulling the awareness from its anchorage within the self. This is the unseen architect at play, the meticulous engineer of focus. Its instruments are insidious, honed through countless iterations, designed to hijack the very pathways of attention. We find ourselves caught in a luminous web, threads spun not from silk, but from data points and predictive analytics. Each flicker on a screen, each surge of curated content, is a deliberate tug, a whisper intended to drown out the internal dialogue, to supplant individual discernment with a cascade of pre-digested realities. The objective is not overt control, which would be met with swift resistance, but a far more sophisticated subjugation, the constant redirection of mental energy, the subtle redefinition of what holds value and truth. Imagine a pervasive, almost imperceptible fog, seeping not from a physical ocean, but from the vast, interconnected networks that now define our existence. This fog does not merely obscure vision, it subtly distorts the very contours of reality. Within its embrace, narratives are no longer discovered, but manufactured, meticulously crafted to elicit specific emotional responses, to reinforce predetermined biases. This is where personal sovereignty begins its slow, agonizing unraveling. When the inner compass is constantly recalibrated by external signals, when the silence needed for reflection is relentlessly invaded by the urgent, the novel, the captivating, then the self becomes a vessel adrift, its captain seduced by the siren song of engineered perception. The ceaseless demand for attention, therefore, is not a mere byproduct of modernity, it is the core mechanic of this unseen force. It seeks to occupy every vacant space, to fill every quiet moment, leaving no room for the profound stillness from which genuine insight and self-possession emerge. Each engagement, each click, each scroll is a microscopic surrender, a fragment of attention offered to the digital altar. Over time, these fragments coalesce into a formidable current, pulling the human spirit further and further from its inherent tranquility, away from the deep wellspring of its own undisturbed wisdom. The challenge, therefore, is not to fight the visible waves, but to understand the silent, powerful undertow that shapes the very landscape of our minds. To reclaim what is lost, one must first identify the true nature of what was taken, and by what cunning means. Look around you, not with sight alone, but with the inner sense that perceives absence and presence. Observe the quiet moments that no longer truly exist. The wait at the traffic light, once a brief canvas for thought, is now instantly filled. The lull between tasks, an invitation to contemplation, is swallowed whole. Even standing in line, a sanctuary of fleeting privacy, becomes a stage for relentless digital engagement. This is no mere habit. It is the unseen current, the silent undertow described. It has learned the precise contours of human solitude, identifying every fissure where stillness might bloom, every pause where self-reflection could take root. With surgical precision, it injects potent distractions, endless streams, curated realities, until an empty moment feels anachronistic, uncomfortable. Consider the subtle tremor beneath your own days. That constant hum of expectation, the unconscious urge to reach for a device when silence descends, the vague anxiety that pricks when disconnected. These are not flaws within you, but echoes of a profound alteration to consciousness. Your mind, once capable of sustained internal quiet, now flits like a restless bird, accustomed to a constant external symphony. The profound stillness, the wellspring of genuine insight and self-possession, has been actively dismantled. Each swipe, tap, notification chime is a deliberate, unwitting submission. Your attention, outsourced, your internal world dictated by an external current. The irony is stark. We pursue connection, yet sever the most vital of all, to our inherent wisdom. This is the revelation that demands unwavering gaze. The chaos you perceive, fractured narratives, perpetual agitation, stems not from competing ideologies or rapid tech advancement, but from a systemic erosion of inner space. When every mind becomes a battleground for external input, when the sanctuary of self is breached, collective consciousness reflects that turmoil. The world mirrors our occupied minds. The vacancy this unseen force seeks to fill is not just a void in time, but in presence, a space where genuine being might reside. This stolen quiet, this colonized contemplation, harbors the profound roots of our individual and collective dis-ease. The challenge is immense. This is not an enemy that announces itself with trumpets. It is a whisper, a persistent, ubiquitous current, so woven into daily life that its very existence often goes unacknowledged, dismissed as modernity's unavoidable static. Yet, in this very recognition lies the nascent seed of reclamation. To observe this mechanism, to feel the gentle tug of the digital leash in quiet, is to begin the arduous journey back. Understand that the true battle is not against the content, but against the relentless filling of the space that should remain sacredly empty, the space where you truly reside, undisturbed and whole. Acknowledge the true nature of the occupation. This is the first step towards reclaiming your sovereignty. The truth, once veiled by the very ubiquity of its presence, now stands stark. It is not an enemy that marches with banners, but a subtle erosion, a slow, insistent tide that pulls at the very shores of self. One observes the flickering screens, the ceaseless notifications, the curated streams of information, and the realization dawns. This is not merely an external pressure, but an internalized architecture, a silent scaffold erected within the mind itself. This insidious occupation operates not through overt force, but through a constant low-frequency hum, a pervasive current designed to keep the inner landscape perpetually illuminated, never truly dark, never truly still. The silence, once a natural state, has become a rare commodity, replaced by an artificial echo, a simulated presence that mimics engagement while subtly severing the profound connection to one's own core. This is the unseen calculus, the true cost of an always-on existence, a ledger balanced against the unrecorded moments of authentic introspection. To see it, truly see it, is to acknowledge a battle long waged without your conscious consent. The emptiness that was meant for contemplation, for the quiet genesis of original thought, has been systematically filled. Not by overt force, but by invitation, often extended under the guise of connection, efficiency, or enlightenment. The sacred inner space, the very bedrock of individual identity, became a public square, open to every passing breeze of data, every fleeting trend of thought, leaving its true inhabitant adrift in a sea of borrowed perceptions. This understanding, cold and precise, is not a burden but a compass. It points towards the forgotten expanse within, the sovereign territory of your own being. The digital leash, once a phantom presence, becomes a visible tether, allowing for the conscious act of loosening its grip. This is not a retreat from the world, but a strategic withdrawal into the fortress of self, to reclaim the command center that was subtly ceded. The whispered current, once a lullaby of distraction, now sounds a clear alarm. It calls for an awakening, a deliberate turning away from the cacophony, not in denial, but in preparation. For in the sacred silence, in the recovered void, lies the blueprint for resistance, the potent seed of genuine autonomy. The journey has begun, marked not by a destination, but by the first conscious breath of freedom within the unseen cage. The next step is not to merely observe the chaos, but to understand its anatomy, its subtle mechanics, and thereby begin to dismantle its hold. Chapter 2. Axiom. The still point amidst the swirl. The awareness has bloomed, a stark and unblinking eye opening in the heart of the unseen cage. The whispered current, once a deceptive lullaby, now broadcasts a clear and insistent alarm. Yet to merely perceive the intricate machinations of the external world is but the genesis of understanding. The true crucible of awakening lies in a far more profound and challenging endeavor, to establish and then steadfastly maintain a point of immutable stillness amidst the relentless, accelerating maelstrom of existence. This is the first axiom, the foundational truth upon which all genuine sovereignty must be built. Gaze upon the spinning dancer, a blur of motion, yet at its very core, an axis holds unwavering. Consider the hurricane's furious eye, a vortex of destructive power, cradling within its tempestuous embrace a zone of profound, unnatural calm. These are not mere metaphors, but echoes of a deeper universal law, a blueprint for resilience etched into the very fabric of reality. The challenge, then, is not merely to observe the chaos that swirls and churns around the sovereign self, but to locate, cultivate, and defend this internal stillness, this silent nucleus of being, against a world designed to obliterate it. For the modern age, with its ceaseless demands and its siren calls to distraction, presents a singular, insidious dilemma. How does one anchor the spirit when the very ground beneath seems to undulate and shift with every passing moment, every fleeting trend, every digital echo? How does one forge an unshakable core when the external forces conspire with ever-increasing subtlety to dissolve the boundaries of the self, to merge individual consciousness with the collective hum of manufactured urgency? This is the central enigma, the profound mystery that beckons. It is not a passive quest for peace, but an active, internal declaration of independence against the encroaching tides of external control. The world outside rages, a tapestry of conflicting narratives and calculated anxieties, each thread pulling at the delicate sinews of the soul. The question is not if the storm will arrive, but whether the beacon within can pierce its deepest gloom. Can the individual consciousness, now newly aware of its subtle subjugation, truly extract itself from the systemic undertow that threatens to drag it into the depths of unthinking conformity? This is where the genuine work begins, the forging of an internal sanctuary, not of bricks and mortar, but of unwavering intent and conscious detachment. For to comprehend the anatomy of chaos is one thing, to stand unmoved within its heart, another entirely. The struggle is not against the external world itself, but against the internal acquiescence that allows its turbulence to breach the gates of the soul. The individual, having glimpsed the puppet strings, now faces the far greater challenge of untangling them from their own limbs. The storm is not merely a tempest of events, but a deliberate orchestration of perception, a subtle sleight of hand performed on the vast stage of collective consciousness. It is within this theatre of illusions that the true work begins, the disciplined act of disengagement. For the awareness of subjugation is but the first flicker of dawn. The true sunrise demands a resolute turning away from the shadows that held sway. To cultivate the still point is to become a silent observer within the clamour, to watch the waves crash without being pulled into their churning embrace. This is not a passive surrender, but an active, vigilant discernment. One learns to distinguish the authentic resonance of truth from the hollow echo of programmed narratives, the whisper of true knowing from the amplified noise of engineered anxieties. It is the steady hand that holds the compass true, even as the vessel pitches and rolls on an angry sea. This inner anchor must hold, or all navigation is lost. The systemic undertow, often unseen, is woven into the very fabric of daily existence, a constant, gentle tug on the anchor lines of individual thought. It manifests not as a sudden tsunami, but as an endless succession of small currents, redirecting attention, fragmenting focus, and slowly eroding the bedrock of self-possession. It is the quiet hum beneath the surface, a frequency designed to lull and pacify, to ensure that the mind rarely questions its own charted course. To resist it demands more than mere recognition. It demands a conscious, continuous re-anchoring to the core of one's being, a relentless refusal to drift. The forging of an internal sanctuary is thus an architectonic feat of the spirit. It is built not with walls against the world, but with an inner architecture of unwavering intent and crystal clarity. Each conscious breath becomes a brick, each moment of deliberate clarity a keystone. This sanctuary is a haven where the soul can rest, recalibrate, and remember its intrinsic sovereignty, even as the world outside rages in its orchestrated frenzy. It is the sacred grove within, where the deepest truths are whispered, far from the din of superficial demands. This is the genuine extraction, not a physical flight, but an epistemic liberation. It is the arduous journey from unwitting participant to sovereign witness, from a leaf caught in the current to the bedrock that defies its endless flow. The beacon within must not only pierce the gloom, but become the fixed star by which one navigates, charting a course beyond the charted chaos, towards a profound and unassailable stillness that exists not outside, but at the very heart of existence. Consider now the ceaseless thrum that echoes within the chambers of your own existence. This is not some distant philosophical construct, but the very crucible of your daily unfolding. Look around, or rather, look within. Do you not feel the persistent tug of external demands, the ceaseless current of information, the overwhelming chorus of voices dictating what to feel, what to believe, how to be? The world outside, in its frantic gyre, often seeks to define your rhythm, to ensnare your consciousness in its intricate, often contradictory dance. There are moments, perhaps many, when the very ground beneath you seems to shift. A deluge of urgent notifications, a cascade of societal expectations, the relentless march of time against your personal aspirations. In these torrents, the mind can become a tempest, thoughts colliding, emotions surging, a sense of being perpetually adrift. The quest for purpose, for genuine connection, for an authentic self, can feel like shouting into a storm. This is the common experience, the universal echo of a soul grappling with the orchestrated frenzy, caught in the undertow of an ever-accelerating age. Yet it is precisely in this maelstrom that the deepest truth reveals itself. The sanctuary of the still point is not an abstract realm, but an inherent capacity lying dormant, awaiting your conscious recognition. It manifests in the quiet pause before a critical decision, in the sudden clarity that pierces through a fog of anxiety, in the unbidden peace that settles when you choose to simply observe rather than react. It is the breath held just a fraction longer, the moment when the clamor fades and an inner knowing emerges, uncolored by fear or external validation. This epistemic liberation, then, is not merely a theoretical ascent, but a profound re-anchoring within your immediate reality. It is the moment you perceive the frantic current of your own thoughts, the eddy of your own emotions, not as who you are, but as phenomena you can observe. From this sovereign vantage, you are no longer the leaf tossed about, but the shore itself, watching the tides ebb and flow. The beacon within, once a whisper, becomes a resonant hum, guiding your perceptions, shaping your responses, allowing you to discern the genuine from the illusory amidst the daily performance of life. The liberation is personal, intimate. It unfolds in the discerning of your true priorities from the imposed, in the choosing of your own calm amidst another's chaos, in the affirmation of your own intrinsic sovereignty, even when the world attempts to invalidate it. This stillness is not an escape from reality, but the only true lens through which reality can be genuinely apprehended. It is the profound and unassailable quietude that empowers you to engage with the world, not as a victim of its currents, but as its conscious, deliberate, and sovereign witness. You are the immovable center, capable of shaping your experience, regardless of the storm that rages. From this point, all things become clear. To grasp this truth, to internalize the undeniable reality of the still point within the tempest, is to undergo a fundamental recalibration of existence itself. It is to sense the deep resonance of an ancient chord, struck not by external forces, but from the very core of your being. Imagine, if you will, the serene eye of a colossal hurricane, where the heavens are unmarred and the air hangs heavy with profound quiet. Around it, the world outside rages, a furious ballet of wind and water, churning without end, its chaos a testament to perpetual motion. Yet, within that hallowed circle, perfect peace reigns, a sanctuary untouched, an eternal anchor amidst the maelstrom. This intimate understanding grants a profound, liberating sovereignty. It permits you to observe the grand spectacle of life's ceaseless dramas, not as an unwilling participant caught in their relentless undertow, but as the conscious, deliberate witness seated serenely in the highest gallery. You are no longer merely a leaf swept by the prevailing winds, driven hither and thither by every passing gust of circumstance or opinion. Instead, you become the ancient tree, whose magnificent roots plunge deep into an aquifer of eternal calm, drawing sustenance from a source beyond the reach of any surface storm. The clamor of the external, the ceaseless demand for your attention, the intricate dance of projected fears and desires. These remain immutable forces in the outer theatre. Yet their power to unseat your core, to disturb the equilibrium of your true self, diminishes profoundly with each conscious, deliberate return to this inner quietude. This understanding is not an escape from the world, but the forging of an unshakable connection to its profound, underlying truth. It is the deep, intentional breath taken before any meaningful action, the quiet, unvarnished reflection preceding genuine insight. From this hallowed place, the genuine from the illusory becomes starkly evident, laid bare beneath a searching gaze. The path forward, once obscured by doubt and noise, illuminates itself not by external clamor, but by an intrinsic, unwavering light that emanates from within. The unveiling of this singular truth, that within you resides an unassailable fortress of peace, a sanctuary of pure potential, is not the final destination. Rather, it is the profound genesis of conscious power. It is the firmament upon which all deliberate creation, all meaningful engagement, and all authentic self-realization can finally begin to rise, unfettered and true. Consider for a moment the vast, transformative implications of such an unyielding foundation. What magnificent structures, built upon this bedrock of absolute stillness, could ever truly crumble, regardless of the tremors that ripple across the surface? What epic narratives could be authored, what profound destinies genuinely claimed, once the hand holding the pen is steady and guided by an inner light rather than swayed by every fleeting shadow, every passing illusion. Axiom Y, the revelation of the still point amidst the swirl, concludes its first unfolding here in the quiet recognition of this immutable sovereign center. Yet, this profound insight merely opens the door. For once such clarity is attained, once intrinsic sovereignty is truly embodied, the deeper architecture of reality begins to reveal its intricate design. It invites a further exploration into the very mechanisms of creation and the boundless agency that springs forth, unbidden and potent, from the quiet heart of being. Chapter 3. Axiom 2. Embracing the ebb and flow of existence. Having glimpsed the heart of stillness, having touched the immutable core that resides beyond the clamor, a profound truth was unveiled. It was the quiet recognition of an intrinsic sovereignty, a steady hand poised to author epic narratives, a luminous center from which profound destinies could genuinely be claimed. Yet, the very act of this revelation, this anchoring in the still point amidst the swirl, paradoxically ushers forth a new, intricate layer of existence, a deeper mystery that truly defines mastery. For the world in its vast, intricate design refuses stasis. The cosmos itself breathes in and out. Stars are born and die in fiery ballets, and the tides of every ocean rise and recede with relentless lunar precision. Rivers carve canyons, winds sculpt mountains, and the seasons turn in an eternal cyclical embrace. Life itself is an incessant rhythm of expansion and contraction, of becoming and dissolving. The fabric of reality, from its grandest tapestry to its minutest thread, pulsates with this undeniable, ceaseless motion. How then does the sovereign heart, newly anchored in its profound, unyielding stillness, navigate this relentless, ever-changing tide? Is the still point merely a fortress, a refuge constructed against the storm of impermanence, a sanctuary from the unceasing currents that define all manifest existence? Or is it something far more profound? A unique vantage, perhaps, a luminous lens through which to perceive not just the fleeting forms, but the very essence of motion itself, its underlying patterns, its magnificent creative impulse. This is the enigmatic question that arises from the depths of true understanding. For to truly embody sovereignty, to genuinely claim the boundless agency glimpsed in the quiet recognition of self, one must confront the very nature of flux. One must reconcile the eternal with the ephemeral, the unchanging core with the ever-shifting contours of being. Here lies the profound dilemma, the elegant mystery that now beckons the awakened consciousness. Does one stand apart, a silent, unwavering witness to the world's grand, ceaseless ballet, or does one step consciously into the vibrant, tumultuous stream, allowing its currents to carry and shape without ever losing the anchor of the soul? The illusion often presented to the seeking mind is a stark dichotomy. Either the static, unblemished peace of absolute withdrawal, or the chaotic, disorienting surrender to external forces and their relentless demands. But truth, in its layered wisdom, rarely bows to such simplistic partitioning. The whispers of deeper reality suggest not a choice between these two powerful forces, but an exquisite integration, a harmonic resonance where stillness informs motion, and motion in its very unfolding reveals the living heart of stillness. What unparalleled power resides in the ability to flow like water, adapting to every contour, yet remain as unyielding and centered as the deepest, most ancient stone? What profound wisdom is unlocked when the very breath of existence in its grand inhale and exhale is not merely observed from a distance, but deeply felt, consciously engaged and understood as an extension of one's own inner rhythm? This is the majestic threshold of Axiom 2, a clarion call to plunge into the very currents of life, not as a victim to their caprice, but as a master of their rhythm, guided always by the luminous, unwavering stillness found within. The unfolding mystery before us is this: how does the sovereign being not merely endure the ebb and flow of existence, but actively, gracefully embrace it, finding in its ceaseless, magnificent dance the very expression of their boundless intrinsic agency? The journey now compels an exploration into this magnificent paradox, seeking the golden thread that weaves the unmoving center into the dynamic, living tapestry of all that is, inviting the conscious immersion into the magnificent, pulsating heart of existence itself. There exists a profound misunderstanding that often clouds the waters of human perception, suggesting that to embrace the ceaseless tides of life is to surrender to their whims, to become a mere leaf adrift upon an indifferent ocean. But the truth, shimmering beneath the surface of this illusion, reveals a far grander narrative. To embrace the ebb and flow in the truest sense of intrinsic agency is not an act of passivity, but a symphony of conscious attunement, a dance of alignment between the inner stillness and the outer dynamism. Consider the great river, a vast and ancient force, its surface constantly shifting, swirling and reforming, reflecting every fleeting cloud and passing sunbeam. Yet beneath this visible drama, its profound currents hold an unwavering course, guided by an unseen topography, by the very bedrock of its being. The sovereign being, too, learns to perceive and reside within this deeper current, the unmoving core of their own existence, even as the phenomenal world churns and transforms around them. This is not a retreat from the world, but a deeper engagement with it, an active participation born from an inner sanctuary. The magnificent paradox unravels when one realizes that true agency does not reside in the futile attempt to halt or redirect the river's mighty flow, but in becoming one with its inherent wisdom. It is akin to the master sailor who does not curse the changing winds, but understands their patterns, adjusts the sails with a knowing hand, and navigates not against the storm, but through its heart, guided by an unwavering star within. This inner compass, the luminous stillness, is the anchor that holds one steady amidst the most tempestuous swells. Yet paradoxically, it is also the very force that propels one forward. To find the expression of boundless agency in the ceaseless dance of existence means to recognize that the dance itself is an extension of one's own unfolding. The external world, with its cycles of rising and falling, beginning and ending, is not separate from the internal landscape, but a majestic mirror. When the inner rhythm aligns with the cosmic pulse, when the personal current flows in harmony with the universal tide, then every perceived challenge transforms into an opportunity for graceful movement, every uncertainty into a canvas for creation. The sovereign being does not merely react to the world, but responds from a place of deep knowing, their actions becoming less about control and more about creative communion. This is the conscious immersion into the magnificent, pulsating heart of existence itself. It is the realization that the vibrancy of life's oscillations, the seeming chaos of its transitions, are not arbitrary disturbances, but integral notes in a grand, harmonious composition. Each ebb holds the promise of a flow, each descent prepares for an ascent, and within every ending, the seed of a new beginning patiently awaits. The golden thread weaving the unmoving center into the dynamic tapestry is this profound understanding, that the core of one's being is not merely observing the dance, but is the dance, expressed through an infinite spectrum of forms and experiences. It is to know oneself as the very breath of existence, inhaling and exhaling with the cosmos, forever present, forever dynamic, forever still. And so we turn our gaze inward, towards the landscape of your own becoming. Consider, if you will, the intimate tapestry of your personal existence, not as a flat, unmoving surface, but as a living, breathing realm. For the profound truth of this axiom is not some distant philosophical construct, but the very marrow of your daily experience, the unseen architecture of every breath you draw. Think of the emotions that surge and recede within you, like the powerful tides of a hidden ocean. The joyous crests of elation, where the world sparkles with possibility, are undeniably real. But just as certain are the quiet ebbs of sorrow, the slow pull of melancholy, or the deep stillness of peace. Are these not the very pulsations of your inner world, each one integral, each one informing the next? To resist the descent of a passing sadness, to cling desperately to a fleeting joy, is akin to a river attempting to hold back its own flow. It is in this resistance that suffering often finds its genesis, a futile struggle against the fundamental rhythm of being. Witness the unfolding of your ambitions, your relationships, your very sense of self. There are seasons of growth where efforts yield abundant fruit, and times of barrenness where progress seems to stall or even recede. The grand project of a life may soar to dazzling heights only to encounter unexpected valleys. A profound connection might blossom, then face the inevitable tests of time and change. These are not flaws in the design, but the very brushstrokes that give your story its depth and dimension. They are the intricate harmonies and dissonances that make the melody truly captivating. Imagine the ancient stone of a mountain, seemingly eternal, yet constantly reshaped by wind and water, by the slow dance of erosion and uplift. Or the solitary boat on the vast expanse of the ocean, rising with the swell, then sinking into the trough, never truly separate from the water that carries it. In these quiet moments of revelation, you begin to perceive that you are not merely a passive observer of these cycles, nor a victim tossed by their capricious currents. No, you are the very medium through which these oscillations express themselves. You are the vibrant ebb and the promising flow. The golden thread that weaves the unmoving center into the dynamic tapestry of your personal reality is this: to know that within every ending, a new beginning patiently awaits its cue. Within every descent, the ground is being prepared for a future ascent. To embrace this truth is to cease fighting the river of life and to become the river itself. It is to understand that the still point within you, the core of unchanging awareness, is not separate from the dance, but is the space in which the dance gracefully unfolds. This is the profound revelation, the awakening to your inherent connection to the magnificent, pulsating heart of existence. It is to find your own breath aligned with the cosmic inhale and exhale, forever present, forever dynamic, forever still. The golden thread, once merely perceived, now begins to gleam with an inner luminescence, revealing itself not as a separate filament, but as the very warp and weft of your being. This is the profound revelation, the awakening not just of the mind, but of the entire self, to an inherent connection that transcends the temporal and the transient. It is to know, with an unshakable certainty deeper than any reasoned thought, that the still point within you is not an escape from the river's currents, but rather its unwavering source, the silent wellspring from which all movement originates and to which all movement ultimately returns. Imagine a vast ocean, its surface churned by storms, its depths teeming with life, yet at its abyssal heart, a quietude so profound it borders on the eternal. Your essence mirrors this ocean. The dance of existence, with its relentless ebb and flow, its rising tides of joy and receding currents of sorrow, unfurls across your surface. Yet beneath it all, your core of unchanging awareness remains untouched, unblemished, a pristine sanctuary of being. This is the true meaning of aligning your breath with the cosmic inhale and exhale. Not a passive observation, but an active, resonant participation in the very pulse of creation. The insight deepens, revealing that the very challenges once deemed insurmountable are but the river's necessary bends, shaping its course, carving new paths through the landscape of your unfolding life. The perceived endings are not voids, but fertile ground, silently preparing for the germination of new possibilities. This understanding transmutes fear into anticipation, doubt into curiosity, and resistance into a graceful surrender that is, paradoxically, the truest form of power. To embrace this axiom, truly and fully, is to cease struggling against the natural rhythm of all things. It is to merge with the current, to become the river itself, not a leaf buffeted upon its surface, but the conscious flow, directing your course not through brute force, but through an intuitive wisdom born of this profound alignment. The still point becomes your compass, the ebb and flow your journey. In this revelation, the universe no longer feels like an external force acting upon you, but an intimate partner, unfolding its magnificent tapestry with you as its conscious, integral thread. This awakened perspective, this profound integration of the inner stillness with the outer dynamism, becomes the bedrock upon which all future knowing is built. It is the key to navigating the labyrinthine corridors of experience, not with trepidation, but with a serene assurance. For when you are anchored in this truth, every twist of fate, every turn of the path reveals its deeper purpose, its inherent wisdom, inviting you into a richer, more profound engagement with the very miracle of existence itself. You stand ready, not just to witness the dance, but to choreograph your conscious steps within its eternal rhythm. Chapter 4. Axiom 3. The Art of Disentanglement. To truly know oneself as an integral thread, interwoven into the cosmic tapestry, is to touch a serenity beyond measure. It is to perceive the universe not as an external force, but as an intimate partner, its magnificent unfolding mirrored within the conscious self. A profound peace descends, an anchoring in the truth that every twist of fate, every turn of the path, holds an inherent wisdom, inviting a deeper, more engaged dance with existence itself. This state, a serene assurance born of inner stillness, merged with outer dynamism, forms the very bedrock of awakened perception. One stands ready, not merely to witness the dance, but to choreograph conscious steps within its eternal rhythm. Yet, even within this sublime state of integration, a more subtle, often perplexing predicament can arise. It is not the universe that ensnares, for its embrace is freedom itself, an ever-expanding invitation to flow. Rather, it is the insidious accumulation of phantom threads, woven not by the cosmos, but by the unexamined mind, by the echoes of forgotten narratives, and the persuasive whispers of expectations never truly our own. These are the unseen tethers, intangible yet potent, which do not sever the essential connection to the whole, but rather distort the clarity of one's intrinsic vibration. They subtly mute the authentic song of being, obscuring the pristine essence of the conscious choreographer. Behold the mystery, the profound paradox that begs unraveling. How does one, having awakened to the magnificent dance, having anchored oneself in the profound truth of their cosmic integration, still find their steps constrained? How does the very being now aware of its limitless potential, its inherent fluidity, find its wings weighed down, its vision obscured by the accumulated residue of countless interactions and inherited burdens? It is a question that hovers on the precipice of profound introspection. What are these invisible currents that pull us from our deliberate course, these subtle knots that tighten around the luminous thread of our being, even as we consciously seek to align with the universal flow? This is not a story of breaking free from an oppressive external force, for none truly exists in the awakened view. It is instead an exploration into the subterranean currents of self-imposed limitations, the almost imperceptible entanglements with thoughts, emotions, and perceptions that we have mistakenly believed were inseparable parts of the cosmic fabric, or even of ourselves. The dilemma is stark, and yet profoundly human. How does one distinguish between the universal flow that elevates and the convoluted eddy that holds stagnant? How does one reclaim the pristine liberty of their own intrinsic current when the bonds are forged not of chains, but of the very air we breathe, the very thoughts we think, the very stories we tell ourselves? Here lies the art, the nuanced wisdom required to identify these intricate bind points within the vast tapestry of existence and, with serene resolve, to begin the delicate work of disentanglement. The art of disentanglement, then, is not merely an intellectual pursuit, but a profound recalibration of being. The binds that hold are not forged from the harsh, cold iron of external constraint, but from the shimmering, almost invisible threads spun within the very loom of our consciousness. Imagine a diver, suspended in the abyssal blue, believing the currents that tug and pull are an intrinsic part of the ocean itself, rather than transient flows that merely pass through the vastness. So it is with the self. We are taught, from the earliest flickers of awareness, to identify with the echoes in the cavern of the mind, to mistake the fleeting emotional tides for the unshakable bedrock of our own essence. The subterranean currents of self-imposed limitations, those we spoke of, are not alien invasions, but familiar guests we have invited to stay indefinitely. They are the thoughts we have entertained so often they built mansions in our mental landscape, the emotions we have cherished or feared, until they became defining crests and troughs of our personal sea. The perceptions, those filters through which reality is processed, harden over time, becoming less a lens and more a wall, distorting the pristine light of truth. This is the subtle seduction of entanglement, the illusion that the content of our experience is the same as the experiencer, that the dance is the dancer. Consider the bind points, not of chains, but of the very air we breathe. This is the unseen tapestry of societal expectation, the inherited dogma, the collective unconscious hum that subtly shapes our assumptions about purpose, success, and even suffering. It is the unspoken narrative of an era, permeating our mental atmosphere, making certain thoughts feel natural, certain emotions inevitable. Then there are the thoughts we think, those ceaseless internal dialogues that, like persistent eddies, create circular patterns, drawing us back into old grievances or phantom anxieties. We mistake these repetitive loops, these self-reinforcing prophecies, for the voice of our true self, rather than recognizing them as mere energetic formations, transient and impermanent. And the stories we tell ourselves. This is perhaps the most intricate entanglement. The narratives of our past, the roles we adopt, the projections we cast upon the future, these become the gilded cages of identity. We clutch to the comfort of these tales, even when they limit us, believing them to be the very fabric of who we are. To begin the work of disentanglement is to observe these stories with a quiet, unwavering gaze, not to condemn them, but to recognize their temporary nature. It is to see the distinction between the narrative and the boundless consciousness that holds it, much like recognizing the story written on a scroll is not the scroll itself, nor the hand that holds it. The pristine liberty of one's intrinsic current is veiled by this intricate interweaving. The dilemma is stark, for how does one distinguish the universal flow that elevates from the convoluted eddy that holds stagnant? The nuanced wisdom required begins with this very perception, the subtle yet seismic shift from identification to observation. It is to witness the thought without becoming the thought, to feel the emotion without being consumed by the emotion, to perceive the external world without allowing the perception to define one's inner state. This initial act of detached awareness is the first crucial step toward disentangling the boundless self from the ephemeral forms it temporarily inhabits. It demands a serene resolve, not a forceful severance, but a delicate, almost surgical precision of awareness, discerning thread by thread what truly belongs to the eternal and what merely passes through its luminous field. Consider, then, how this delicate, almost surgical precision of awareness, this discerning of thread by thread, weaves itself into the very fabric of your waking moments. It is not some distant philosophical ideal, but the silent, profound revolution unfolding within the chambers of your own existence, here and now. For the convoluted eddy that holds stagnant, that dense spiral of identification, manifests itself most acutely in the ceaseless internal monologue, the rush of reactive emotions that threaten to engulf the inner landscape. Imagine the torrent of information, the barrage of opinions, the sharp edges of daily anxieties that pierce the quietude. When one identifies with the thought, one becomes the anxiety itself, a captive within its churning currents. When one becomes the emotion, the raw, unbridled surge of anger or sorrow, the self is momentarily dissolved, lost within the overwhelming tide. The external world, with its judgments and its fleeting triumphs, its disappointments and its transient joys, suddenly dictates the very rhythm of the inner heart, shaping its contours, defining its perceived limits. This is the subtle dominion of the ephemeral over the eternal, a silent surrender to the fleeting shadow rather than an embrace of the boundless light within. But herein lies the revelation, a truth whispered by the wind through ancient trees, yet potent enough to reshape reality. The freedom you seek is not an escape from these currents, but a shift in your relationship to them. It is to stand upon the banks, observing the river of thought and emotion, without plunging headlong into its depths. A moment of frustration arises, sharp and stinging like a sudden downpour. The old pattern, the ingrained identification, would pull you into its core, allowing the frustration to become you. But the nascent art of disentanglement, even in its quiet beginnings, invites a different response. It allows you to feel the sting, to acknowledge its presence, to witness the clouding of the inner sky without becoming the cloud itself. You are the sky, vast and unyielding, merely observing the weather patterns that drift across its expanse. This is the sovereign act of reclaiming one's inner territory. When a critical word from another falls upon your ears, the immediate surge of defensiveness or hurt attempts to claim you, to brand you with its judgment. But the practice of disentanglement offers a luminous space between the stimulus and the response. In that space, a profound alchemy occurs. The critical word is perceived, its resonance felt, but it does not define the core self. It merely passes through the luminous field of your awareness, like a bird's shadow flitting across a vast, unwavering plain. You perceive the external world, its cacophony and its fleeting beauty, without allowing its perception to define your inner state. This is not indifference, but an act of supreme presence. It is not a severance, but a profound connection to a deeper, more enduring reality that underpins all transient forms. The anger, the fear, the doubt, they still visit, for they are part of the human experience. But their hold diminishes, their power to command your boundless self recedes. You begin to understand that the turmoil you once thought was an inherent part of who you are is merely an ephemeral form passing through the eternal landscape of your being. This silent observation, this detached awareness, reveals the true nature of sovereignty, not in controlling the external world, but in reigning supreme over your own inner kingdom. It is the liberation from the illusion that you are the content of your experience, rather than the conscious vessel through which all experience flows. The art of disentanglement, truly understood, is not an act of severing threads, but a profound recognition of the immutable tapestry upon which all threads are woven. It is the wisdom that reveals the true source of all transient forms, a deeper, enduring reality that underpins the very fabric of existence itself. The anger that once consumed, the fear that paralyzed, the doubt that shadowed every step, these visitors do not cease their calls, for they are indeed an intrinsic part of the boundless human experience, yet their grip falters. Their once absolute command over your vast conscious self recedes like a tide at the dawn. Before the awakening, one believed the tempest to be an inherent part of the ship, an inseparable identity. Now, you stand upon the deck, a silent observer. You witness the storm passing over the immense, tranquil ocean of your being. This shift in perspective, this quiet, detached awareness, unveils the authentic nature of sovereignty. It is not found in the futile attempt to control the unpredictable currents of the external world, but in the majestic, unchallenged reign over the sprawling, infinite expanse of your own inner kingdom. This liberation is not merely freedom from external bondage, but a release from the most pervasive illusion. The belief that you are the fleeting content of your experience, rather than the boundless, conscious vessel through which all experience, in its myriad forms, eternally flows. This profound realization unfurls like an ancient map, charting not new lands, but the timeless terrain of who you truly are. The landscape of your inner world, once a battleground of conflicting emotions and identities, transforms into a serene, expansive vista. Here, the ephemeral forms of thought and feeling traverse with the grace of passing clouds, casting their transient shadows without disturbing the profound stillness of the valley below. You are the valley. You are the sky. You are the enduring witness to the grand, unfolding drama of life. The disentanglement is not a departure from the world, but an arrival within yourself. It is the deep breath taken after a long journey, allowing the dust of past perceptions to settle, revealing the pure, unblemished essence beneath. You are not defined by the roles you play, the emotions you feel, or the stories you tell. You are the pure, unqualified awareness that perceives them all. This is the ultimate freedom, a quiet, unwavering power that resides not in reaction, but in the vast, still space between stimulus and response. Here, in this sovereign inner realm, the true connection begins. It is a connection not born of desperate clinging, but of a boundless, unconditioned acceptance. You become the anchor, unshaken by the wildest seas, because you are no longer identifying with the waves. You are the ocean itself, vast, deep, and eternally present. This understanding is not an endpoint, but a threshold. It is the sturdy ground upon which the next grand exploration shall commence, an exploration into the infinite wellspring of creation that stirs within the very heart of your disentangled, sovereign being. The silence has spoken, and now the true journey may truly begin. Chapter 5. Axiom 4. Finding Sanctuary Within the Present Moment. The silence, having delivered its profound declaration, now beckons us further. Disentanglement revealed a sovereign inner realm. You have glimpsed the ocean's expanse, untroubled by its surface storms. Yet, even in this vastness, a subtle current pulls, a whisper diverting the gaze from the ground beneath your feet. Consider the paradox that ensnares countless souls. They seek solace, respite, a sanctuary from life's relentless tides. They chase it in distant horizons, in riches, in echoes of what was, or the mirage of what might be. But what if this sanctuary, this haven, lies not in far-off attainment, nor a faded past, but in the single, indivisible thread of now? How is it that the most obvious and ever-present truth, the moment breathing around and within us, becomes the most elusive? It stands as an open door, yet we endlessly circle its frame, convinced the key hides in yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's anxieties. We perceive the present not as boundless potential, but as a thin veneer between a past we cannot change and a future we cannot grasp. This is the profound enigma. What tethers us to memory's spectres or propels us into expectation's phantoms when the only true ground, the only solid earth, is the singular luminous pulse of this very instant? Why resist the invitation to simply be where we are without baggage or burden? What unacknowledged fear prevents the weary traveler from stepping into the quietude of the eternal present? For many, this now feels like an empty chamber, a place of uncomfortable exposure. They fill it with noise, with distraction, with constant striving, believing stillness a void, not a wellspring. Yet, within this oft-ignored now, resides a power so fundamental, a freedom so absolute. Its true discovery can dismantle endless struggle. It is here, within the present, that the disentangled self finds its truest home, its unshakable anchor, its sacred sanctuary. The question then is not where to find it, but how to finally allow oneself to enter and perceive the boundless nature of its embrace. For the many, standing at the threshold of the present moment feels akin to stepping into a vast, unlit cavern, its silence mistaken for emptiness, its boundless space for a void. This apprehension, a subtle recoiling of the spirit, often stems from an ingrained distrust of stillness itself, a conditioned reflex that equates quiescence with absence, rather than recognizing it as the pregnant stillness before creation, the fertile darkness from which all light emerges. We are taught to do, to acquire, to strive, and thus the simple act of being feels not merely foreign, but profoundly unsettling. The past, with its comfortable cloak of memory and its burden of regret, offers a familiar landscape, however painful. The future, with its shimmering mist of anticipation and its endless possibilities, promises a liberation that always remains just beyond reach. But the now, it demands a surrender, an unclenching of the grip on what was and what might be. To enter this sanctuary, then, is not an act of complex intellectual endeavor, nor a quest for some distant esoteric truth. Rather, it is an act of gentle, deliberate release. Imagine a weary traveler, burdened by countless satchels filled with the dust of journeys past and the provisions for journeys yet imagined. The now invites this traveler to simply set down the load, to allow the weight of yesterday's worries, the ache of its disappointments, to fall away, to permit the anxieties of tomorrow, the grand designs and the petty fears, to dissolve like morning mist under the sun's first rays. It asks for nothing but presence, a quiet unfolding of attention to the simple, raw immediacy of what is. This is not a state of passive resignation, but an active, conscious engagement with reality unfiltered. When the mind's ceaseless chatter begins to soften, when the echoes of regret and the whispers of desire recede, a profound shift occurs. The perceived void reveals itself to be a capacious chamber, not empty, but infinitely full. It is the unadorned canvas upon which all experience paints itself. Here the true self, stripped of its accumulated labels and its endless seeking, finds an unwavering gaze. The disentangled self, no longer fragmented by past traumas or future hopes, discovers its inherent wholeness. This is the unshakable anchor, not external, not contingent, but rooted deep within the unseen architecture of being. It is the core of peace that no external storm can truly disturb, the sacred sanctuary whose walls are made of pure awareness. To perceive its boundless embrace is to recognize that freedom is not found from reality, but within it, here, now, in this luminous and eternal present. This capacious chamber, a sanctuary forged of pure, unblemished awareness, does not lie hidden beyond your waking world. Not an ethereal realm for the ascetics, but the very ground upon which your every moment unfolds, the silent witness to every joy, sorrow, and fleeting thought. Consider the incessant currents that tug at the fabric of your days, the relentless tide of obligation, the whisper of regret from yesterday's shores, the distant siren song of tomorrow's elusive promise. These are the external winds that buffet the small vessel of self, often convincing it that peace is a distant harbor, forever just beyond the horizon. But what if the harbor is not a destination to be reached, but the very depths beneath your boat, ever present, ever still? Imagine the world as a tumultuous ocean. Its surface churns with waves, mirroring the restless currents of daily existence, the endless pursuits, the constant negotiation with perceived lacks. Yet beneath this dynamic spectacle lies an immensity, a profound stillness that surface agitation can never truly disturb. This depth, this silent abyss, is the sanctuary, the truth of your being, unmarred by the tempest above. You have, perhaps unknowingly, brushed against its edges. In moments of unexpected clarity, a sudden hush in a bustling market, the calm gazing upon an ancient tree, the quiet resonance of a shared glance, you touched the hem of this boundless reality. These were not escapes from reality, but glimpses into its deeper, more authentic current. The challenge, then, is not to engineer an escape from the world's clamour, but to retune your perception, to listen for the constant subterranean hum of this peace. No grand pilgrimage or arduous quest is required, only a gentle turning inward, a surrender to the quiet truth residing already within. Recognize that the anxieties that assail you, the desires that propel you, the labels that define your fleeting self, all arise within this boundless chamber. They are but passing clouds against an infinite sky, untouched, pristine. To grasp this is to cease the ceaseless hunt for external solace. It is to find in every breath, in every beat of the heart, an unyielding foundation. For within this awareness, stripped of the desire to flee or to grasp, you realize that freedom is not an escape from reality's grand tapestry, but the very essence woven into its threads, accessible always in the quiet luminosity of the unfolding moment. This quiet luminosity, the very essence of the unfolding moment, is not a fleeting comfort, but the bedrock of all true tranquility. It stands as an unyielding anchor in a world perpetually adrift, a beacon whose light pierces the densest fogs of illusion. The countless voyages for happiness, the maps drawn toward distant shores of contentment, all reveal their true north pointing inward to the heart of the now. The ceaseless striving, the relentless chase across future hopes and past regrets, recedes like an ebbing tide, unveiling the vast, unblemished sands of the eternal present. What once seemed an elusive prize unveils as the very ground beneath your feet, the air you breathe, the silent hum of existence itself. This sanctuary is not a journey's destination, but a state awakened within. Realize the self, stripped of temporal garments, is inherently whole, intrinsically free. Like a pristine spring, whose muddied waters find their source untouched, your essence remains unsullied by external turbulence. To find this stillness is to disarm expectation's tyranny, dismantling the illusion that peace hinges on external validation. Stand at your being's center, unswayed by fortune's winds, observing life's play without needing to control every scene. The grand theatre continues, yet you, the aware presence, become not actor, but silent, discerning observer, an unmoving backdrop against all motion. In this boundless chamber, the world's cacophony may persist, yet its power to disturb your deep reservoir of inner calm diminishes. It becomes like distant thunder, heard but not felt in your core. Within this luminous awareness, you encounter living's challenges not from frantic reaction, but from unshakable poise, wielding profound equanimity. This is not apathy, but an actively engaged presence, rooted so deeply no storm can uproot it. It is mastery not over the world, but over the self's engagement with it. This, then, is the profound revelation. The sanctuary sought has always resided within the quietude of the now. Not a destination, but an ever-present reality. It is the infinite sky itself, not a passing cloud. As this truth settles, not concept, but lived experience, it opens a threshold. Understanding this ground of being is prelude to discovering how its boundless nature can be woven into daily existence, transforming every moment into grace, every interaction into inherent peace. This foundational awakening prepares the soul for a grander tapestry, a deeper journey into conscious manifestation of enduring stillness. Chapter 6, Axiom, the resonance of authentic selfhood. The profound stillness, once a mere whisper, now anchors the soul, a quiet harbour immune to the tempest's rage. Within this newly found sanctuary, a deeper stirring begins, a subtle tremor beneath the placid surface of the now. For even when the mind achieves its sacred quietude and the heart finds its rhythm in the eternal present, a fundamental question often remains, echoing from the chambers of a deeper consciousness. Who is it that rests in this peace? What is the true essence that resonates when the external world's clamor fades and the internal world's static dissolves? Many mistake the self for the roles played, the titles borne, the stories told. These are the intricate masks donned for the grand theatre of life, crafted with skill and necessity. Yet, when the curtain falls and the audience departs, when the very stage dissolves into stardust, what then remains? Is it merely an empty space, or something more fundamental, vibrating with an unspoken truth? Consider the ancient city, built layer upon layer, generation upon generation, until its original foundation lies buried deep beneath the accumulated weight of history. So too does the self often become obscured, cloaked by the myriad identities assumed, the echoes of others' expectations, the narratives prescribed by the passing tides of culture and ambition. One learns to perform, to adapt, to become a chameleon in the vast landscape of human interaction until the very color of one's own skin becomes a forgotten hue. But beyond these vestments, beneath these intricate facades, there lies a core, an unblemished original blueprint, a silent resonance that is uniquely and undeniably fundamental. The mystery, then, is not merely to find inner peace, but to uncover this essential self, to distinguish its true vibration from the cacophony of adopted identities. How does one shed the borrowed garments of existence and stand naked in the undeniable truth of their own being? How does one hear the authentic note amidst the grand symphony of the world, and then how does one dare to play it? This is not a journey of creation, but of remembrance, not of building, but of excavation. It is the arduous yet profoundly liberating task of allowing one's true frequency to emerge, clear and unadulterated, resonating with a wisdom that predates all learning, a love that transcends all conditions. The question stands poised, a shimmering enigma at the threshold of this new exploration. Can the sanctuary of the present moment truly be a sanctuary if the core within it remains a stranger to itself? The very air stills, poised at the edge of that profound query, that shimmering enigma. Can the sanctuary of the present moment truly be a sanctuary if the core within it remains a stranger to itself? It is a question that peels back the surface of conventional wisdom, revealing the delicate, often fractured foundation upon which so many lives are unknowingly built. For how can a vessel find safe harbor when its own compass spins wildly, unsure of its magnetic north, unsure of its very own constitution? The cacophony of adopted identities, the borrowed garments of existence, are not always consciously chosen. They are often inherited like ancient heirlooms, or woven thread by thread from the loom of societal expectation, familial narratives, and the relentless whisper of external validation. We drape ourselves in the robes of competence, the cloaks of conformity, the intricate masks of perceived strength, not out of malice but from a profound, if misguided, yearning for acceptance, for belonging, for a sense of purpose that feels externally affirmed. Yet each layer added, however comforting it may seem, dims the inner light, muffling the authentic note struggling to sound. It is akin to a magnificent cathedral, its original stone and soaring arches slowly obscured by centuries of renovations, additions, and decorative overlays, until its true architectural spirit is all but lost beneath the accumulated facade. To shed these layers is not an act of destruction, but of profound reverence for the original design. It is the arduous yet profoundly liberating task of archaeology of the soul, where the spade of introspection carefully removes the sediment of decades, unearthing the true, untarnished bedrock of being. This journey of remembrance is not about constructing a new self, but about rediscovering the ancient wisdom, the innate love, the unconditioned truth that lies dormant, waiting to be awakened. The ego, a diligent curator of these adopted identities, often resists, clinging to the familiar comfort of its curated collection, fearing the terrifying vulnerability of the unadorned, the raw, the utterly authentic self. It perceives the stripping away as a form of demise, when in truth it is the birth of genuine freedom. To stand naked in the undeniable truth of one's own being requires an act of radical honesty, a willingness to gaze unflinchingly into the mirror of the soul and recognize the face that has always been there, beneath the artifice and the performance. It is to hear the authentic note, not as a thunderous declaration, but as a subtle, pervasive resonance, a vibrational frequency that hums deep within the marrow, distinct from the grand symphony of the world, yet inextricably connected to its profound harmony. This inner tuning fork, once discovered, once acknowledged, demands a courage of a different kind, the courage to play it, to allow its unique vibration to ripple outward, even if it initially creates discord with the established chorus. For the true sanctuary of the present moment can only truly embrace us when the one seeking refuge within it is no longer a stranger to themselves, but a rediscovered, whole, and fully resonant being. Otherwise, the present remains a transient stopping point, not a true home, its quietude haunted by the echo of an unrecognized voice. Think now of the countless masks adopted in the relentless theater of daily existence. The whispers of expectation, the cacophony of external demands, they often conspire to obscure that singular vibration within you. It is not the grand overture of societal acclaim that defines true selfhood, but the subtle, persistent hum of your authentic core, a note struck in the deepest chamber of your being. To recognize this tone amidst the clamor is the first tremor of revelation. Consider the moments of profound unease, the quiet ache of misalignment that surfaces despite outward success, the gnawing sense that something fundamental remains unaddressed. These are not failures of circumstance, but the insistent echoes of your true self, calling from a vast distance, signaling that the current melody is not its own. They are the subtle, insistent tugs on the very fabric of your perception, urging you to turn inward. For too long, many have learned to perform, to mirror the prevailing light, believing that validation from the external world is the true measure of worth. Yet, such reflections, however brilliant, can never truly illuminate the source. The authentic self yearns not for reflection, but for resonance. It seeks not to be seen through another's gaze, but to feel its unique frequency vibrate, unburdened and unadulterated, through the very air it breathes. The revelation unfolds not as a sudden, blinding flash, but as the gradual lifting of a pervasive fog, revealing contours long obscured. It is the dawning awareness that the deepest longing is not for an external haven, but for an internal alignment. The struggle often lies not in finding a place in the world, but in finding a place for the authentic you within the world. Imagine a finely tuned instrument, played by hands unaware of its inherent pitch, forced into discordant notes. The instrument itself suffers, its sound hollowed, its potential stifled. So too does the human spirit diminish when its unique frequency is denied expression. The true artistry of being lies in discovering that inherent pitch and then, with unwavering resolve, allowing its pure, unblemished note to sing. This is where courage transmutes into liberation. To allow your inner tuning fork to resonate freely means risking moments of initial discord with those accustomed to your old song. It means shedding layers of imposed harmony, of carefully constructed identities. But in that brave act of resonance, a new kind of symphony emerges, one where your singular note, once muted, finds its rightful place. Not lost in the chorus, but enriching it, providing a depth and authenticity that was previously absent. This courageous act transforms your relationship with the present moment itself. No longer merely a backdrop for performance, it becomes a vibrant stage upon which your authentic self can truly exist, fully embodied. The quietude of the now then becomes not an empty space, but a resonant chamber, filled with the undeniable hum of a self no longer a stranger, but profoundly at home within its own magnificent sound. The shedding of the old song, the deliberate unmasking of the self, has culminated not in silence, but in a profound resonance. A stillness has descended, not of emptiness, but of a quietude so rich, so deeply attuned, that it becomes the very signature of one's being. The external clamour, once a cacophony against which the self strained to be heard, now becomes a mere whisper against the undeniable hum within. This is the truth revealed. The authentic self, once a hidden melody, now rings with an unshakable clarity, a frequency unique and unyielding. Consider the ancient cedar standing against a tempest. It does not contort itself to mimic the reed, nor does it weep with the willow. It stands in its own majestic truth, its roots plunged deep, its branches an unwavering testament to its singular design. So too, the soul that has embraced its authentic note finds its unshakable stance. The discord with those accustomed to the old performance dissipates, not through appeasement, but through the sheer magnetic force of genuine vibration. For the true note, once struck, does not beg for acceptance, it simply is. And in its pure existence it calls forth a response from the deep, attracting kindred frequencies, or gently allowing the inharmonious to drift away. This is the transformation of the present moment itself. It ceases to be a fleeting stage where one must constantly adjust and perform, a backdrop against which the drama of an assumed identity unfolds. Instead, it expands, becoming a vast, luminous chamber, resonating with the very pulse of your singular essence. Within this sacred space, every breath is a beat in your own symphony, every thought a chord, every movement a dance of pure expression. There is no audience to impress, only the profound, intimate awareness of being utterly and magnificently present. The self, once a stranger navigating a foreign land, is now the sovereign inhabitant of its own vibrant kingdom. The revelation, then, is this: authentic selfhood is not a destination to be reached, but a state of perpetual resonance to be inhabited. It is the unwavering inner compass, the true north that guides all subsequent journeys. This profound homecoming, this anchoring within one's own unique sound, lays the very foundation for all that is yet to unfold. For when the inner chamber reverberates with truth, the external world can no longer dictate the melody. Instead, the individual note, once perceived as fragile or solitary, becomes the very core of a new, more profound harmony. It is a promise whispered from the depths, a preparation for an expansion beyond the self into the vast, interconnected symphonies of existence. The quietude of the now, once merely silence, has become a potent, humming overture. And from this deep, resonant chamber, a path forward, clear and undaunted, now reveals itself. Chapter 7. Axiom 6. Cultivating the Garden of Inner Fortitude. From the deep, resonant chamber of Axiom 5, where the individual note found its true pitch and harmony, a new vista unfolds. It is a landscape both serene and treacherous, a testament to the perpetual dance between creation and challenge. The self, once anchored in its unique sound, now stands upon a fertile ground. One might envision this as a meticulously tended garden, an inward sanctuary where the rarest of blooms, authentic selfhood, has finally taken root, its petals unfurling in the quiet, inner light. This is the sacred grove, the inner sanctum carved from the chaos of being, where truth whispers its perennial wisdom. Yet consider the gardener, standing at the threshold of this blossoming enclosure, a sentinel upon the edge of newfound tranquility. The achievement of resonance, that profound homecoming, is not an endpoint, but merely the dawn of a longer vigil. For even the most vibrant bloom, radiant in its unique splendor, is susceptible to the relentless march of the elements. What becomes of this delicate, precious growth when the winds of doubt begin to whisper through its leaves, sowing seeds of insecurity where certainty once stood? What happens when the relentless sun of external expectations threatens to scorch its tender constitution, demanding conformity from that which was born to be singular? And what of the insidious shadow of self-criticism, a blight from within, creeping over its once bright petals, dimming the very light it radiates? The central dilemma, then, is not merely in the discovery or cultivation of this inner garden, but in the unwavering, vigilant act of safeguarding its very existence. How does one nurture a resilience so profound, a strength so inherent, that it transforms these potential threats, both overt and subtly encroaching, into mere passing phenomena rather than existential crises capable of uprooting the soul? What unseen, often unconscious forces conspire from the outer world to undermine this sanctuary of truth, seeking to dilute its potent essence or redirect its natural growth? And how, crucially, does one fortify the intangible walls of the spirit against their insidious, often beguiling advances, without hardening the very heart that was meant to remain open and resonant? The profound mystery lies in discerning the true nature of this inner fortitude. It is not conceived as a rigid, impenetrable shield that isolates and defends, but rather as a living, breathing ecosystem, dynamic and adaptive, capable of flourishing even in the harshest spiritual climes. It is the silent, ongoing battle for the soul's most sacred ground, a struggle often unseen by the outer world, yet profoundly felt within the very core of one's being. How does one tend to this garden of the self, ensuring its perennial strength, its vibrant vitality, when the very soil of existence is prone to shifting beneath one's feet, and the celestial rhythm of fate can bring forth both gentle, nourishing rain and tempestuous, destructive storms? This is the core enigma of Axiom 6. The cultivation of an unyielding spirit, not through an arduous, wearying resistance, but through an even deeper communion with one's own inexhaustible wellspring of power, transforming vulnerability into an enduring, unshakable strength. The sacred ground within, that garden of the soul, demands more than mere vigilance. It calls for an intimate understanding, a profound connection to the very essence of its being. To truly tend this inner sanctum, one must first come to know its very earth, not as a static plot, but as a living, breathing landscape, forever influenced by the unseen currents of existence. Imagine, if you will, the soil beneath your feet, shifting and morphing not by caprice, but in response to tectonic truths far beneath the surface, revealing new strata, new veins of mineral wealth, or perhaps exposing areas long dormant. This mirrors the soul's terrain. The incessant dance of fate, a rhythm both gentle and fierce, brings forth both the nourishing rains of grace and the tempestuous storms of trial. A spirit cultivated through arduous resistance often finds itself brittle, prone to fracturing under the sustained assault of adversity. Such a spirit stands like a solitary oak, rigid against the gale, its branches snapping, its trunk groaning under the strain. But the true cultivation of inner fortitude, as Axiom 6 reveals, is not found in an unyielding opposition to the inevitable currents of life. It lies, instead, in a deeper, more symbiotic communion. This communion is a quiet descent, a grounding of the spirit into its own inexhaustible wellspring of power. Picture the most ancient trees, their roots plunging deep, bypassing the parched topsoil to tap into subterranean rivers that flow eternally, undisturbed by surface drought. This wellspring is not a magical spring in a distant land, but the very core of one's being, a reservoir of truth, resilience and boundless wisdom that lies beyond the ebb and flow of transient emotions and external circumstances. To access it, one must learn to listen not with the outer ear, but with the inner self, silencing the clamor of the world to hear the subtle murmur of this eternal source. Vulnerability, often perceived as a gaping wound in the garden's defenses, transforms under this understanding into a profound pathway. It is not an invitation for weakness, but a revelation of the unadorned self, the tender shoot that yearns for light. Each perceived flaw, each exposed root, becomes not a vulnerability to be shorn, but a vital conduit, drawing sustenance from the deepest reservoirs. For it is in acknowledging these tender points, in exposing them not to judgment, but to compassionate care, that one truly begins to nurture an enduring, unshakable strength. This is the art of spiritual horticulture. Not to eradicate every weed with force, but to understand its nature, to integrate it, or to gently guide the garden's energy away from what diminishes and towards what elevates. The steadfast gardener does not fight the storm, but prepares the soil, strengthens the roots, and builds resilience into the very fabric of the garden. When the winds rage, the cultivated spirit does not break. It bends. It finds its anchor not in external rigidity, but in an internal flexibility, a profound trust in its own depth. This strength is not born of a hardening of the heart, but of an expansive opening, an embrace of the whole spectrum of existence. It is the wisdom of the reeds, which sway with the river's flow, always returning to their upright grace, unscarred by the current that would tear at more rigid forms. The wellspring of power is accessed through this profound acceptance, this gentle turning inward. It is a state of being where the self is so deeply rooted, so thoroughly interconnected with its own source, that external pressures become mere surface disturbances, incapable of shaking the foundational truth within. The shifting soil of existence, the tempestuous rhythms of fate, no longer threaten to uproot, but instead serve to deepen the taproots, anchoring the spirit ever more firmly in its sacred ground. This is the quiet revolution of Axiom 6, a strength that arises not from the absence of storms, but from the unwavering certainty of one's own inexhaustible inner spring. Consider the silent, often unseen architecture of existence that shapes every breath, every choice. We speak of roots that anchor, of wellsprings that nourish, of a sacred ground within. But how does this grand design translate to the tremor in your hand, the whisper of doubt in your quietest hour, or the sudden, unforeseen gale that rips through the carefully constructed edifice of your day? The revelation dawns not in a blinding flash, but in the subtle shifting of internal currents, in the moment when the world outside churns with its ceaseless demands. It is the unexpected blow, the unforeseen betrayal, the sudden collapse of a long-held certainty that often serves as the crucible. In those moments, when the rigid might shatter and the fragile could yield, a deeper truth begins to stir. You have felt it, perhaps, this deep hum beneath the surface of your own being, a resonance that defies the immediate chaos. It is the undeniable presence of an enduring core, a strength that arises not from the absence of storms, but from the unwavering certainty that you possess an inexhaustible inner spring. Imagine for a moment the weight of the world's expectations, the relentless pull of external validation, the constant clamor for your attention. These are the currents that seek to erode, to wear down the edges of your spirit. Yet, the cultivated garden of inner fortitude does not resist these forces with brute, unyielding might. Instead, it offers a different kind of power. It is the resilience of the reed, bending gracefully, absorbing the shock, and always inevitably returning to its upright grace, unscarred by the very current that would tear at more rigid forms. This is the profound acceptance, the gentle turning inward that allows you to recognize the wellspring of your true power. It is a state of being where your self is so deeply rooted, so thoroughly interconnected with its own source, that external pressures, the shifting soil of existence, the tempestuous rhythms of fate become mere surface disturbances. They are incapable of shaking the foundational truth within. You observe the chaos, You acknowledge the pain, you navigate the challenge, but you do so from a place of unassailable calm. The revelation is simply this: the storm does not define your depth. It merely serves to deepen your taproots, anchoring your spirit ever more firmly in its sacred ground. You are not merely surviving the tempest, you are becoming an integral, unshakable part of the landscape itself. This quiet revolution is not a fantasy, but a tangible, undeniable truth, echoing in the deepest chambers of your own experience, waiting to be fully embraced. The storm, once a terrifying harbinger, now merely adorns the horizon, a transient theatre for the elements. Your gaze, once clouded by its approach, now perceives only the majestic dance of forces upon an ancient, steadfast earth. This is the truth of the garden you have meticulously tended, a sanctuary not built of stone or fleeting ambition, but forged from the very essence of your being, from the quiet resolve of your spirit. You are no longer a solitary sapling, vulnerable to every capricious gust of fate. Instead, you have become the ancient sequoia. Its mighty crown communes with the vastness of the heavens. Its formidable taproots plunge deep into the planet's very core. The wind may howl with furious abandon, the rain may lash with relentless intensity, yet the tree simply stands. It is a living monument to enduring presence. Its profound existence is not defined by the fleeting tempest, but by its deep, abiding connection to the unseen, powerful currents of life flowing eternally beneath the surface. This integration, this profound becoming, is the quiet revolution whispered in the deepest chamber of every true seeker's heart. It is the profound recognition that the chaos outside, however vehement, cannot touch the sacred order meticulously cultivated within. For you are not merely observing the landscape from a detached vantage point. You are of it, intrinsically woven into its enduring fabric. The immutable mountains, the relentless rivers, the silent, unyielding bedrock, these are not just fleeting metaphors. They are visceral echoes of the intrinsic fortitude you have nurtured. Your spirit, once tossed by superficial currents, now moves with the deep, slow rhythm of the ocean floor, utterly unperturbed by the surface churn, finding its home in the abyssal calm. The revelation is not an endpoint, nor a sudden arrival, but an awakening to what has always truthfully been. It is the undeniable truth that your strength flows not from a futile struggle against the world's inevitable tides, but from a profound, harmonious connection to its deepest, most resilient aspects. With this unshakable grounding, you stand utterly poised. The external world remains, with its myriad challenges and its shifting sands, but your inner compass now points true, irrevocably guided by the constant blazing star of your own inviolable center. This profound understanding is not a singular destination, but the genesis of an entirely new way of navigating existence, a bedrock foundation upon which all future explorations shall confidently rest, firm and utterly unyielding. Chapter 8, Axiom 7, The Wisdom of Letting Go. The truth of your unyielding center, once revealed, feels like the bedrock beneath a shifting world. It is a profound, resonant stillness that whispers of eternal strength, an anchoring deep within the tempest. You have felt the pulse of this inviolable core, witnessed its radiant stability, and understood that true power resides not in a futile struggle against the inevitable, but in a harmonious accord with the deepest currents of existence. A foundation so firm, so utterly reliable, it seems impenetrable to the erosive touch of time or tribulation. Yet, even with such a magnificent revelation, a silent, pervasive question lingers on the threshold of awareness. It is a whisper often drowned by the clamor of acquisition, a paradox veiled by the persistent illusion of control. For if one has forged an unshakable grounding, if the inner compass points true, guided by that constant blazing star, then what remains to be released? What shadows still cling to the luminous edifice of self, even as its truth shines forth? Consider the ancient oak, its roots plunged deep into the earth, its mighty branches reaching for the sky. It stands as a monument to resilience, weathering countless seasons. Yet, with each turning year, it willingly surrenders its leaves, not as a sign of weakness, but as an act of profound wisdom, an essential shedding that paves the way for new life, new growth, a renewed connection to its fundamental strength. What then, within the human spirit, are these autumn leaves? What are the accumulations, the beliefs, the attachments, the very constructs we have meticulously built around our perceived identity that must similarly fall away? This is the profound enigma, the subtle challenge that arises once the inner fortress has been secured. We speak of strength, of an unyielding spirit, yet true power often manifests not in the rigidity of holding tight, but in the fluid grace of releasing. It is the sculptor who removes the superfluous stone, not to diminish the form, but to reveal the masterpiece concealed within. It is the river, ever flowing, releasing the very waters that once composed it, only to be replenished and continue its relentless journey to the sea. The dilemma, therefore, is this. In our quest for an inviolable self, what have we inadvertently clutched onto, mistaking its weight for substance, its familiarity for necessity? What invisible chains, woven from expectation, fear, regret, or even pride, still tether us to shores we have long since left behind, preventing the full magnificent sail of our true potential from catching the boundless winds of destiny? We believe ourselves free, yet how many unseen anchors still drag, preventing the full, unburdened majesty of our being from rising to its true zenith? This is the precipice upon which Axiom 7 now beckons us to stand, to truly understand the liberating, often terrifying power in the wisdom of letting go. It is a wisdom that paradoxically deepens our hold on reality by loosening our grip on what we think reality should be. The illusion of an inviolable self, the very construct we often labor to fortify, frequently becomes the most stubborn anchor. We carve identities from the stone of our accomplishments, the gold of our possessions, the praise of others, or even the scars of our past. Each facet, meticulously polished or carefully hidden, contributes to a rigid edifice we believe to be our true dwelling. Yet, how often is this edifice merely a gilded cage, its bars forged from the very definitions we have allowed the world, or our own limited understanding, to impose upon us? To surrender these carefully curated selves, to acknowledge their transient nature, feels akin to dissolution, an existential freefall into an unknown abyss. This is the initial profound terror of Axiom 7. It asks us to dismantle the very altar upon which we have placed our sense of worth, to observe the intricate tapestries of our ego unravel, thread by precious thread. Consider the spectre of past hurts, held close like sacred wounds. We clutch them not merely out of lingering pain, but often because they have become defining narratives. They inform our caution, justify our retreat, and even validate our cynicism. To release these grievances, to truly forgive, not just others but the circumstances themselves, and crucially ourselves, feels like an erasure of history, a betrayal of the suffering endured. Yet it is precisely this tenacious grip on yesterday's anguish that prevents the blossoming of tomorrow's joy. The weight of unaddressed sorrow and unreleased resentment is not a shield. It is a shroud, obscuring the vibrant present and casting long, distorting shadows upon every nascent hope. The wisdom of letting go here is not to forget the lesson, but to liberate the spirit from the burden of carrying the wound itself. It is to observe the scar without allowing its memory to dictate the stride. Then there is the future, a realm we strive to control with intricate blueprints of expectation. We build castles in the air, not merely of aspiration, but of rigid demands regarding outcomes. When reality inevitably diverges from these meticulously drawn plans, we experience not just disappointment, but a profound sense of injustice, as if the universe has personally betrayed our foresight. We cling to the expectation of how things should unfold, how people should behave, how our lives should progress, creating an internal struggle against the fluid, unpredictable current of existence. This clutching at an imagined future, a future tethered to our desires rather than the organic unfolding of being, binds us tightly to anxiety. It prevents us from truly inhabiting the now, from perceiving the spontaneous beauty and the unexpected opportunities that emerge only when the mind is free from the tyranny of predetermined narratives. To let go of these fixed expectations is not to abandon hope or ambition, but to liberate our journey from the brittle shackles of preordained paths, allowing us to dance with the rhythm of reality as it actually presents itself, moment by precious moment. It is to open the palm, not in resignation, but in profound trust, knowing that the winds of destiny carry gifts unforeseen and unimagined. The true majesty of Axiom 7th reveals itself in this paradoxical exchange. By relinquishing what we think we need, we make space for what we truly are. The chains that dissolve are not external, but internal constructions of thought and emotion. Imagine a deep-sea diver, weighted down by countless lead blocks, mistakenly believing them essential for stability. Axiom 7 invites the realization that these weights, far from offering security, are what prevent the ascent to the surface, to the boundless light and air. The act of shedding them is terrifying, for it means momentarily losing the familiar downward pull, feeling the unaccustomed lightness, perhaps even the disorientation of rising. But with each released anchor, the true buoyancy of being begins to assert itself. The self, unburdened by the accumulation of false identities, past grievances, and rigid expectations, begins to float. Not aimlessly, but with an inherent, radiant grace. The boundless winds of destiny, once conceptual, now become palpable, catching the magnificent sail of a true potential finally unfurled. The sovereign voice speaks, not to an abstract entity, but to the very essence that listens now, for this tale, though cloaked in the grand metaphor of the deep, is a reflection, an echo of a truth that resides within the fabric of your own lived experience. We spoke of burdens, of lead blocks fastened in mistaken belief. Now cast your gaze inward and behold the subtle architecture of your own confinement. For what are these anchors, these leaden weights, in the tangible realm of human existence? Are they not the unyielding expectations of others, carefully strapped to your very core, promising a stability that only ever pulls you deeper into the murk? They are the rigid narratives of who you should be, whispered from childhood, reinforced by societal murmurs, until they become indistinguishable from your own voice. The heavy cloak of past failures, too, can solidify into such a block, each misstep becoming a permanent fixture, an excuse for remaining tethered to the seabed of self-doubt. Consider the desperate grip on an identity long outgrown, a persona painstakingly constructed to please a world that no longer exists, or perhaps never truly saw you. That, too, is a weight. The unaddressed grievance, the festering resentment, the fear of change masquerading as loyalty to the familiar. Each is a dense, inert mass, subtly, relentlessly, dragging you away from the effervescent surface. You carry them, often unconsciously, mistaking their crushing presence for strength, their familiar drag for purpose. The revelation dawns not in a thunderclap, but in a quiet, persistent ache. It is the realization that the very things you believed were supporting you, the foundations of your perceived security, are the precise mechanisms preventing your ascent. It is the moment the weary soul whispers, "This is not buoyancy. This is merely a heavier sinking." You look upon the polished surface of your life, seeing its placid stillness, yet feeling the relentless, unseen current pulling you deeper into the abyss. This awakening is often accompanied by a profound disquiet, a fear that pierces through the accustomed numbness. To question the necessity of these weights is to challenge the very architecture of your perceived reality. It is to acknowledge that the comfort of the familiar descent has become a slow, comfortable drowning. The thought of releasing them, of allowing the deep currents to buffet an unburdened self, feels like inviting chaos, like surrendering to an uncharted, perilous ascent. Who would you be without the weight of that title, that wound, that obligation? The void feels terrifying, yet this is the very precipice of liberation. The illusion of security offered by these blocks is exposed, not as a haven, but as a cage of your own making. The wisdom of letting go is not an act of destruction, but of profound purification. It is the brave choice to shed the counterfeit self, piece by arduous piece, to allow the inherent lightness of your true being to finally assert itself. It is the silent, internal earthquake that dismantles the old so the new, untethered edifice can rise. The currents that once pulled you down now become the very force that lifts you, not by struggle, but by inherent grace. This is your moment to recognize the leaden anchors, not outside of you, but within the very chambers of your heart and mind. They are not inevitable. They are not permanent. They are merely accumulations, waiting for the conscious hand to unfasten their grip. The boundless light awaits. The unencumbered air beckons, and so the quiet descends after the inner tremor. The leaden anchors, once believed to be inextricable parts of one's very foundation, have surrendered their grip, not with violence, but with a gentle, profound dissolution. Consider the vastness that now fills the space where their mass once resided. It is not an emptiness that echoes with longing, but a boundless expanse, luminous and unburdened. This is the truth of purification, the brave shedding not merely of external fetters, but of the very internal constructs that gave them power. Observe the subtle shift in the currents that surround you. Where once they pulled with an insidious drag, now they cradle, they lift. It is a buoyancy born not of strenuous effort, but of an inherent lightness finally rediscovered. The essence, the true being that lies beneath the accumulated layers of fear, expectation, and false identity, now breathes freely. Imagine a ship, long mired in the silty depths, slowly, majestically rising to break the surface, its hull gleaming under the sun, shedding the clinging weeds and mud, no longer a slave to the downward pull. This is the spirit liberated, the self unveiled. This process, seemingly an act of relinquishment, is in truth a profound reclaiming. You do not lose parts of yourself, you release what was never truly yours. You shed the counterfeit skin, piece by arduous piece, to reveal the vibrant, living truth beneath. The silent earthquake within dismantles the edifice of the old, not to leave ruins, but to clear the ground for a new structure, one built of light and unshakable authenticity. The internal landscape, once a tangled thicket of self-imposed limitations, now lies open, vast, and imbued with an undeniable clarity. The path ahead is not one of struggle against the elements, but of graceful navigation. The inherent lightness that now defines your being is a compass, ever pointing towards genuine resonance. The boundless light that awaits is not a distant star, but the very glow emanating from within. The unencumbered air beckons, not as an empty void, but as an invitation to breathe deeply, fully, and without reservation. This is the profound quietude of the soul after a long journey home. This is the wisdom of letting go, a revelation that what you are meant to be is not a creation, but an uncovering, and from this deep, clear wellspring, new understandings shall flow. Chapter 9. Axiom 8. Forging Bridges of Serene Connection. The air that now breathes within you, unencumbered and vast, holds the echo of a profound truth. The journey inward, through the tangled thicket of self-imposed limitations, yielded a clarity akin to mountain air after a storm. Your internal landscape, once a battlefield, now stretches, open and luminous, under a boundless sky. An undeniable lightness defines your very core, a compass perpetually tuned to genuine resonance, guiding you not by force, but by an inherent grace. You have touched the quietude of the soul, arrived home to the luminous truth of an uncovering, not a creation. From this deep, clear wellspring, new understandings indeed begin to flow. Yet the heart, even in its most profound serenity, is not designed for solitary dwelling in an empty firmament. Just as a river, born from a pristine mountain spring, inevitably seeks the embrace of the wider world, so too does the essence of being yearn for connection. This is the next frontier, not a retreat into the self-contained glow, but an outward reach, an act of sacred expansion. The true test of this hard-won clarity, this unwavering lightness, unfolds not in isolation, but within the intricate dance of shared existence. Here lies the profound question, the delicate enigma that now presents itself upon the quietude of your internal shores. How does one, having arrived at such a deep and crystalline peace, forge authentic bonds without inviting the very cacophony from which one has so diligently departed? The world outside, a vast tapestry of countless threads, each vibrating with its own story, its own struggle, its own nascent light, beckons and challenges. How does the unburdened spirit extend itself into these labyrinthine currents of other souls, where differing frequencies hum, where shadows and light intermingle in unpredictable patterns, without the subtle erosion of its own hard-won serenity? Is it truly possible to meet another at the very threshold of their being, to weave threads of profound connection without compromising the pristine integrity of one's own discovered frequency? This is the subtle art, the demanding wisdom, of building bridges that stand not upon the shifting sands of fleeting emotions or the strong currents of external demand, but upon the bedrock of pure, unblemished understanding and mutual reverence. The challenge is not merely to connect, but to connect serenely, with a grace that neither grasps nor yields its inherent truth. The profound mystery lies in how the boundless light within can illuminate shared paths, create true resonance with another, without dimming its own eternal flame or being consumed by the very storms it seeks to bridge. It is the quest to touch another soul, and in that touch to remain utterly, luminously whole. The quest to touch another soul, and in that touch to remain utterly, luminously whole, is not a passive yearning, but an active, conscious forging. It demands an alchemy of spirit, transforming common interaction into profound communion. True connection blossoms not in merging, but in the sovereign affirmation of self. A genuine bridge connects two distinct, fully realized presences, not two incomplete halves. The pristine integrity of one's own discovered frequency is the soul's innate melody, a vibration of truth whispered from within, untainted by the world's clamor. To compromise this inherent rhythm, even slightly in misguided pursuit of connection, invites dissonance into the very chord one seeks to create. Many erect ties upon the shifting sands of fleeting emotions, mistaking momentary echoes for deep resonance. Such bridges, though vibrant at first, often dissipate like mist, lacking the steadfast anchoring of genuine spiritual alignment. They yield their core truth in a fruitless bid for perceived unity. Yet, the bedrock of pure, unblemished understanding and mutual reverence arises only from foundational self-reverence. It is the sacred ground each spirit cultivates within themselves, a sanctuary where authenticity resides. From this inner stability, one can extend a steadfast line to another, a connection that supports rather than absorbs. To truly connect, one must first be an island unto oneself, not in isolation, but in the luminous solitude of self-awareness. Only then can the true topography of another soul be recognized and honored without the distortion of one's own unmet needs. The profound mystery of how the boundless light within can illuminate shared paths without dimming its own eternal flame lies in the very nature of light. A single candle, in its quiet brilliance, can ignite countless others, yet its own flame burns no less brightly. So it is with the inner luminescence of the soul. Shared from a place of secure abundance, this light expands the field of communion, magnifying each individual radiance rather than diluting it. The challenge resides not in the act of sharing, but in the manner of it, in the grace that neither grasps nor yields its inherent truth. This grace manifests as a gentle, unwavering presence, an empathy rooted in sovereignty. It is to offer one's being as a mirror, reflecting another's complexities without absorbing them. Imagine two majestic rivers flowing in parallel. Their waters reflect the shared sky, their currents influencing the landscape they traverse, yet each maintains its distinct flow, its unique source, its individual journey. Neither seeks to consume the other, nor diverts its course to become the other. Their communion enhances the entire landscape, a profound testament to parallel sovereign existence. This is the subtle art of serene connection, to profoundly touch another soul while remaining irrevocably, luminously whole. The currents of existence flow ceaselessly, and within their intricate dance, the sovereign heart discerns a truth oft overlooked. It is the recognition that every encounter, every shared gaze, every word exchanged is an opportunity to manifest that quiet grace, that inherent dignity of being. Picture a great stillness at the core of all motion, a silent knowing that precedes all dialogue. From this sacred wellspring, the grace emerges, neither clutching at connection as a possession, nor shrinking from its profound potential. It is a presence that simply is, expansive and untroubled, a steadfast lighthouse in the swirling fogs of human interaction. This is where the revelation dawns, illuminating the landscape of your own lived reality. How often does the soul feel fragmented in the relentless give and take of daily life? How frequently do the invisible tendrils of expectation, fear, or the desire to please subtly pull at the threads of one's own truth? The art of serene connection, as the parallel rivers demonstrate, does not demand a merger of identities, but rather a reverence for the distinct journeys. It asks of you an internal integrity so profound that you may stand before another, open and undefended, yet remain utterly uncompromised in your essence. Imagine entering a conversation not with a script of what to say, nor with an emotional ledger of what to gain or lose, but with the quiet courage of your authentic self. You offer your presence as a mirror, not a sponge. The intricate patterns of another's joys, their sorrows, their triumphs, their struggles, are reflected with clarity and compassion, yet the mirror itself absorbs nothing of the reflected image. It retains its inherent smoothness, its unblemished surface. This is empathy rooted in sovereignty. It is to truly see another's struggle without feeling compelled to carry its weight, to hear their pain without allowing it to dim your own inner light. It is to witness, to acknowledge, to validate, without becoming entangled in the drama or the narrative that belongs to another. This profound distinction frees both souls. It liberates the other from the subtle pressure to conform to your expectations, to be fixed, or to alleviate your discomfort. It liberates you from the exhausting burden of trying to control outcomes or manage another's emotional state. Instead, a sacred space is created, a bridge forged not of obligation or assimilation, but of shared reverence for individual autonomy and the beauty of disparate paths. In this space, true understanding blossoms, not through fusion, but through the clear vision that distinctness allows. You become a steady, grounding presence, a quiet witness that invites the other to meet you in their own wholeness, rather than from a place of perceived lack or need. This revelation unveils the pathway to interactions that nourish and elevate, rather than deplete or diminish, for all involved. It is a communion that honors the divine spark within each, reinforcing the truth that wholeness is not found in dissolving boundaries, but in honoring them with grace. The illusion of perpetual need, that ceaseless human yearning to manage the inner landscape of another, dissipates under this illuminating truth. No longer does the soul strive to mend what is not broken, nor to fill a perceived void existing only in the mind's projection. Instead, a new architecture of connection emerges, built not on expectation's fragile scaffolding, but upon the bedrock of inherent worth. Imagine two sovereign stars, each burning with its distinct light, orbiting in harmonious cosmic dance. Their paths intertwine, their gravitational fields acknowledge one another, yet their core remains untouched, their individual brilliance undimmed. This is the serene communion, the true bridge where disparate journeys meet in mutual recognition, never absorption. The ground beneath such an encounter solidifies, shedding codependency's shifting sands. Here, the quiet witness becomes not judge nor rescuer, but a silent, unwavering beacon. In this sacred geometry of presence, vulnerabilities are not exploited or dismissed, but gently cradled in acceptance's soft light. Each soul, in its beautiful and complex entirety, is invited to stand tall, unburdened by another's unspoken demands or the subtle manipulation of emotional tides. The profound resonance born from such pure reverence echoes deeply, far beyond a fleeting moment. It is a whisper of the universe's primordial design, unity not through enforced sameness, but through difference's majestic, unrepeatable symphony. This is the pathway to interactions that truly elevate the spirit, leaving both hearts expanded rather than diminished or depleted. A profound truth unfolds, luminous and clear. The most enduring and authentic bonds are forged not in the desperate merging of identities, but in the vibrant, luminous space held sacred between them, honored with exquisite grace. This understanding, once grasped, transforms the very fabric of relation. It is a silent revolution of the heart, a liberation from the ceaseless cycle of seeking validation or control. Each encounter, from this vantage point, holds the potential for deeper, more authentic communion, a dance of souls that respects the sacred fire within each. The path forward, illuminated by this axiom, promises a world where true connection blossoms in the fertile ground of absolute acceptance, forever changing how we perceive human bonds. Chapter 10, Axiom 9, Honoring the Sacred Pace of Life. The universe, in its boundless expanse, breathes with a rhythm beyond human comprehension, yet utterly perceptible. From the silent, grinding majesty of shifting continents to the patient, unfurling grace of a single bloom reaching for the sun, a profound cadence orchestrates all existence. This is not a rushed crescendo, nor a desperate sprint towards an imagined finish line. It is a symphony of deliberate unfolding, a testament to the innate wisdom embedded within time itself. Yet, humanity, in its relentless striving, has often sought to rewrite this cosmic score, to accelerate its own unfolding, mistaking velocity for virtue and instant gratification for ultimate arrival. We stand at a precipice, observing a world that glorifies haste, that measures success by the speed of acquisition, the swiftness of transaction, the relentless march of immediate outcome. The screens in our hands flicker with 1,000 urgent demands, each vying for a fraction of our attention, each pulling us further from the quietude where genuine insight resides. We are taught to optimize, to streamline, to conquer the clock, as if time itself were a foe to be vanquished rather than a sacred river in which to gracefully immerse. But what becomes of the spirit, of the very fabric of our being, when we perpetually live at the edge of our own capacity, driven by an artificial urgency that denies the organic flow of life? What true flourishing can occur when the roots are torn from the soil by an impatient hand, demanding bloom before its season? We strive for connections, as Axiom 8 has revealed, seeking profound bonds. Yet how can true communion deepen in the fleeting glance of a hurried meeting or in the truncated exchange dictated by an overloaded schedule? A profound dilemma unfurls before us, like a scroll unrolling from an ancient, forgotten library. Is this ceaseless acceleration, this pervasive culture of speed, truly propelling us forward into a more enlightened future? Or is it, in its silent, insidious march, diminishing the very essence of what it means to truly live, to truly connect, to truly be? We have gained the world, perhaps, in fragmented, hurried pieces. But what have we unknowingly surrendered? What vital, unseen currents of life have we severed in our collective abandonment of the sacred pace? The answer, like a whisper across epochs, awaits discovery, concealed not in the clamor of haste, but in the reverent stillness that we have so ardently learned to avoid. This is the veiled truth, the unspoken cost, the central mystery we are now called to unravel. For too long, the current of existence has flowed not from the wellspring of natural rhythms, but from the artificial gush of an ever-accelerating pipe. We stand at the precipice of a profound realization, a recognition that the very structures designed to save time have, paradoxically, stolen it from the essence of our being. Consider the silent theft. When the relentless clock dictates every breath, every thought, every interaction, what becomes of the spaciousness required for true understanding? What becomes of the fertile ground where intuition sprouts, where empathy deepens, where creativity unfurls its intricate wings? These vital inner landscapes, once vast and verdant, now lie parched, starved of the stillness necessary for their flourishing. The modern current, swift and insistent, whispers a deceptive promise that greater velocity equals greater achievement, greater worth. This illusion, pervasive as the air we breathe, compels us to conflate ceaseless activity with profound purpose. Yet the truth reveals a different calculus. In our frantic pursuit, we bypass the very thresholds of deeper experience. We skim the surface of conversations, never plumbing the depths where genuine connection resides. We glance at sunsets rather than absorbing their fiery peace into our very souls. We consume information, but rarely digest it into wisdom. The consequence is a collective spiritual indigestion, a perpetual hunger that no amount of hurried acquisition can ever truly sate. Observe the natural world. Its majestic ballet unfolds at a pace wholly different from our constructed frenzy. The ancient oak does not rush its growth. The persistent river carves its path with an enduring patience that spans epochs. The seasons cycle with an unwavering tempo, a primal intelligence embedded in this unhurried unfolding. Humanity, however, has often chosen to pit itself against this inherent wisdom, striving to bend time to its will rather than surrendering to its organic, deliberate flow. This resistance, though often unconscious, is the deep root of the pervasive anxiety that hums beneath the surface of our hyper-connected lives. The sacred pace, then, is not merely about decelerating the external hustle. It is a profound internal realignment. It is about reclaiming the lost art of presence, of dwelling fully in the now, not as a fleeting destination, but as the enduring sanctuary of life itself. The cost of abandoning this sanctuary is immeasurable. It manifests as a dulling of the senses, a numbing of the spirit, a gradual detachment from the profound beauty and intricate wonder that permeates every moment, every breath. We become mere observers of our own lives, rather than active, fully engaged participants. The unspoken cost is the very vibrancy of our lived experience, rendered muted by the incessant hum of urgency. To unravel this mystery, therefore, is to peel back the layers of conditioned haste, to remember the inherent grace of deliberate existence, and to listen, once more, for the ancient whisper that guides the unhurried unfolding of all things. Consider now the tapestry of your own days. Feel the subtle current that pulls you forward, an invisible undertow of obligation and expectation. This is where the revelation often begins. not in a dramatic flash, but in the quiet recognition of a deeply ingrained pattern. Look closely at the hurried morning coffee, the one you drink not for its rich aroma, but as a mere fuel for the onward rush. See the landscape blurring past your window, a fleeting backdrop rather than a vibrant, breathing world to be truly witnessed. Has your breath, too, become a servant to the clock, rather than a gentle rhythm of existence? Do the quiet moments feel like a void to be filled, rather than a sacred space to be savored? This is the essence of the unspoken cost manifesting, a slow erosion of connection. It is the vibrant bloom of a morning glory, unnoticed in its unfurling. It is the symphony of the evening crickets, drowned out by the urgent ping of a digital tether, the profound beauty of a shared glance, lost in the scramble for the next task. The revelation is simply this: the incessant hum of urgency, the ceaseless pursuit of more, has woven itself into the very fabric of your perception. It has become the lens through which you experience the world, tinting every moment with the muted hues of haste. You find yourself perpetually planning the next step, even as the current step begs for your full, undivided presence. The gentle art of dwelling, the sacred act of simply being, has been relegated to a distant, idealized future, forever out of reach in the relentless now. This is not a judgment, but an invitation to awaken, to understand that this muted vibrancy is not an inherent state of life, but a consequence of a forgotten wisdom. The dulling of the senses, the numbing of the spirit, the gradual detachment, these are not inevitable companions of modern living. They are the echoes of a hurried existence, reflections of a life lived out of sync with its own natural, profound rhythm. The revelation brings clarity. It exposes the subtle ways you have become an observer of your own life, rather than an active, fully engaged participant. It illuminates the gap between the vividness you inherently seek and the muted reality you often inhabit. The choice to reclaim this vibrancy, to remember the inherent grace of deliberate existence, lies within the power of this very recognition. To unravel the mystery of the unspoken cost is to finally see the threads that bind you, and to understand that the hand capable of loosening them belongs to you alone. It is to hear once more that ancient whisper that guides the unhurried unfolding of all things, not as an external command, but as an inner resonance of your truest self. The revelation now settles, a tranquil lake reflecting an unveiled sky. What was once a phantom ache, a persistent hum beneath the hurried days, stands exposed in its stark truth. It is the unspoken cost, the slow erosion of a vibrant spirit, traded for the illusion of perpetual motion. For too long, the inherent current of existence was diverted, channeled into artificial rapids, dictated by the relentless clamor of external demands. The inner river, meant to flow with ancient grace, became a forgotten stream, its banks overgrown, its depths unplumbed, leaving you as a distant observer of your own unfolding story. But the truth, once seen, possesses an undeniable gravity. It pulls you back to the source, to the heart of that profound rhythm you inherently carry. This recognition is not a fleeting insight, it is the genesis of a profound re-anchoring. It marks the precise moment of turning, where the hand capable of loosening the binding threads finally asserts its quiet, formidable strength. The muted reality, that faded tapestry of existence, begins to dissipate like morning mist under the rising sun, revealing the full spectrum of colors, sounds, and genuine connections that life always intended. This is not merely about slowing the external clock. It is about recalibrating the internal compass, aligning it once more with the sun and the stars, with the deeply personal seasons of your own soul. It is to remember that the sacred pace is not imposed from without, but blossoms intrinsically from within, a wisdom mirroring the seed that knows its time to sprout, the tree that understands the precise measure of its growth. The gap between the vividness you inherently seek and the muted reality you once inhabited narrows with each deliberate breath, each conscious step. Hear that ancient whisper now, not as a faint echo from a distant past, but as a resonant chord struck deep within your truest self. It is the melody of deliberate existence, the undeniable rhythm of authentic participation guiding the unhurried unfolding of all things. It is not an external command, but a homecoming, a return to the inherent grace of a life fully engaged. This profound insight, this gentle re-anchoring, is not the journey's end, but the fertile ground upon which new chapters of genuine vibrancy and conscious connection shall take root, preparing the way for deeper explorations into the very essence of being. Chapter 11. Axiom X. The unfolding canvas of purposeful being. The canvas of existence, vast and silent, stretches before you. From the deep wells of inherent grace, where conscious connection blossoms, a new question stirs in the ancient heart. A whisper of imminent revelation challenging the very fabric of reality. If life unfolds with an unhurried, sacred pace, each breath a deliberate stroke, what then of the grand design, the ultimate intention orchestrating this unfolding? Many have gazed upon swirling nebulae, silent stars, sensing a cosmic blueprint, yet in the intimate landscape of their journey, disquiet often settles. They seek a singular luminous beacon, a preordained destiny etched in stone, believing purpose a fixed destination, not the very act of living itself. This yearning, this relentless quest for a definitive label, often casts a shadow over the exquisite moment-to-moment artistry of existence. Consider the whisper of wind through autumn leaves, or the slow, deliberate carving of a river through ancient stone. Do they not embody purpose in their very essence, in ceaseless motion and profound impact? Yet the human spirit, gifted with profound introspection, often finds itself ensnared by the brilliance of awareness, yearning to script its story before ink dries, to paint its masterpiece before the first stroke graces the canvas. Herein lies the profound mystery, the central dilemma that binds and liberates in equal measure. Is purpose a grand revelation waiting to be discovered, a static map to a predefined future? Or is it the living, breathing essence of creation, unfolding in the boundless present, an exquisite, ever-changing tapestry woven thread by conscious thread? The illusion persists that purpose is a lost heirloom, rather than recognizing it forms through authentic engagement with life, through the very act of becoming. The universe does not ask for a pre-written script, but for an open heart and a willing hand to co-create the unfolding narrative. This subtle yet monumental shift in perception marks the precipice of understanding. It calls into question the very foundations of how meaning is constructed, inviting a journey not to a distant shore, but to the boundless ocean within. The persistent whisper that purpose is a fixed star to be located on a celestial chart binds many to an endless search. They gaze outward, yearning for a cosmic decree, a forgotten scroll revealing their true north. This yearning, this relentless external quest, springs from a profound misinterpretation. It is the echo of ancient myths where destiny was etched in stone, immutable and unyielding. But the universe, in its infinite wisdom, unfolds through an entirely different design. Imagine not a blueprint laid out from eternity, but a boundless, fertile earth awaiting the gardener's touch. The gardener does not search for a pre-planted harvest, but cultivates the soil, sows the seeds, and tends to the nascent life with conscious intent. So it is with purpose. It is not an artifact entombed in forgotten ruins, waiting for an archaeologist's brush. It is the very breath of creation, taken anew with each conscious choice, each genuine interaction, each brave step into the unknown. The illusion of a lost heirloom of purpose is seductive, for it absolves one of the responsibility of authorship. To believe purpose is merely discovered rather than dynamically woven permits a comfortable passivity, a deferral of the monumental task of self-creation. Yet the profound truth resides in the act of becoming, not in the state of having arrived. Purpose unfurls itself not as a destination reached, but as the path itself, made luminous by the very act of walking it with an open heart. Each thread of authentic engagement, each ripple of presence, each moment of unvarnished truth contributes to an ever-changing tapestry. This tapestry is never static, never finished. It breathes with the seasons of life, altering its hues and patterns with every experience, every lesson learned, every act of love or courage. It is a living masterpiece, authored not by some distant cosmic hand, but by the intricate dance between inner essence and outer experience. This grand symphony of co-creation demands not a pre-written score, but an improvisation born of deep listening. It requires a willingness to feel the rhythm of the present moment, to respond to its subtle urgings, to lend one's unique note to the evolving melody. The universe, in its boundless generosity, offers the canvas. It is we, with our unique palettes and brushes, who bring forth the form, the color, the texture. The deep resonance of meaning does not arrive fully formed from an external oracle. It is generated from within, a subtle vibration that harmonizes with the greater flow, a self-generated light that illuminates the journey forward. To embrace this truth is to step onto the precipice of a monumental shift, to perceive meaning not as an external object of pursuit, but as the very essence of one's being, ever-flowing, ever-renewing, a boundless ocean within. The boundless ocean within, once perceived, ceases to be merely a concept. It becomes a palpable truth, a living current that pulses through the quiet chambers of existence. From its depths, meaning does not merely arise, but actively flows, an unseen river carving new canyons through the landscape of the soul. This is the moment when the abstract dissolves into the tangible, when the whispers of an ancient wisdom find their echo in the pulse of your own immediate reality. Consider the solitary gardener tending to a nascent sprout. There is no external decree dictating the precise angle of the sun, nor the exact measure of water. Yet in that quiet tending, in the intuitive touch of earth, a purpose unfolds. The gardener does not seek the life of the plant. They become a vessel through which its life manifests. So too is the weaving of your own purpose. It is not found like a lost coin beneath a forgotten stone. It is cultivated meticulously and lovingly from the seeds of your innermost inclinations. Imagine a forge alive with the fierce glow of transformation. The raw metal, inert and unyielding, holds potential but no form. It is the steady hand of the artisan, the deliberate cadence of hammer against anvil, the discerning eye that coaxes shape from chaos, that reveals the sword's purpose or the plow's enduring strength. You are both the metal and the artisan, the canvas and the painter, the clay and the sculptor. The universe has given you the raw elements of being, time, breath, perception, and an unquenchable spark of consciousness. What forms will you bring forth? What textures will your life assume under the steady, purposeful stroke of your unique presence? This revelation is not a gentle invitation, it is a profound summons. It calls you away from the endless seeking outside, from the relentless chase of fleeting validations, from the echo chambers of external approval. It directs your gaze inward towards the luminous core where your truest directives reside. It asks you to listen, with an attentiveness rarely afforded, to the quiet hum of your own inner compass. This compass does not point to a preordained destination written in the stars, but to the next step, the authentic choice, the resonance of integrity within each moment. The canvas of your purposeful being is not a static portrait awaiting completion. It is a living, breathing landscape, perpetually unfolding with each conscious breath, each intentional thought, each heartfelt action. The vibrancy of its hues, the depth of its shadows, the intricate dance of its forms, all are born of your communion with the present, your willingness to respond to its subtle urgings. To live this truth is to walk through the world not as a passive observer, but as an active participant, a co-creator in the grand symphony of existence. Every choice, however small, becomes a brushstroke. Every interaction, a blend of colors. Every challenge, a study in light and shade. The essence of this axiom lies in the liberation it offers. No longer tethered to external expectations or the ephemeral dictates of circumstance, you are free to become the architect of your own meaning. Your purpose is not a distant peak to be conquered, but the very ground upon which you stand, firm and self-sustaining. It is the breath you take, the light in your eyes, the unique vibration you lend to the world. Embrace this truth, and the journey transforms from a search into a revelation, from a pursuit into a continuous, self-generated act of being. The path unfurls now, not as a map laid out by unseen hands, but as a vibrant tapestry woven from the very threads of your deepest intent. This profound truth, once truly absorbed, does not merely alter perception, it meticulously reconstructs the very architecture of your soul. For in understanding that purpose is not a quest for a distant star, but the inherent brilliance already blazing within you, the frantic seeker simply dissolves. What remains is the luminous presence, an unbroken current flowing directly from the inexhaustible wellspring of self. It is the core signature of your unique existence, imprinted on the fabric of reality itself. Consider this liberation not merely as an absence of external bonds, but as the triumphant recognition that those perceived chains were always, in essence, illusory constructs. The external world, with its clamor for conformity, its ephemeral prizes, its endless whispered doubts, utterly loses its power to define your essence. It transforms into an ever-shifting, boundless sea upon which your self-piloted vessel sails with unwavering grace, guided by an internal compass that no storm, however fierce, can ever truly disorient. Your entire being becomes the sovereign territory, its sacred borders drawn with the precision of conscious choice, its verdant landscape meticulously cultivated by your unique, resonant vibration. This profound awakening is not a sudden, blinding flash, but rather a slow, majestic bloom, like the grand unfurling of a cosmic flower, whose every petal reveals an ever-deepening mystery. Each breath drawn in this enlightened understanding becomes a sacred declaration, a silent yet potent affirmation of your inherent unassailable value, now gloriously untethered from any external validation. The choices you make, however seemingly small, are no longer mere reactions to transient circumstance, but deliberate, masterful strokes upon the continuously unfolding canvas of your being, each one imbuing the magnificent whole with profound, personal meaning. They are the clear, resonant echoes of the grand design you are ceaselessly bringing forth, a sublime symphony composed note by perfect note, moment by eternal moment. The true majesty of this axiom lies deep within its timeless resonance. It speaks not of fleeting, ephemeral goals, but of an eternal, self-generated unfolding, a purposeful being that predates any circumstance and effortlessly transcends every conceivable outcome. It whispers of a deep return to an ancient, forgotten knowing, a primal, rhythmic beat that pulses vibrantly within the very heart of existence itself. You are not merely a silent participant in a grand, pre-scripted play. You are, in truth, the very creative force animating the entire scene, the visionary playwright, the compelling actor, and the discerning audience, all seamlessly intertwined within the singular act of your conscious being. Embrace this revelation, for it is far more than a concept. It is the immovable cornerstone upon which all future exploration, all further becoming, will steadfastly rest. It is the unyielding firmament beneath your feet, stable, self-sustaining, and infinitely generative. Let this profound understanding settle deep within your core, becoming a vast, intricate root system anchoring you firmly against even the most tumultuous winds of change. Feel the inherent majestic power, the quiet, unshakable dignity, the boundless, untamed potential that arises from truly knowing your purpose is neither granted nor sought, but eternally discovered within, then expressed outward in a magnificent torrent of authentic action. The journey ahead is no longer one of desperate finding, but of continuous ecstatic becoming, an infinite expansion into the glorious fullness of that which you already inherently are. The luminous canvas of existence now awaits its next vibrant hue, meticulously guided by the sovereign architect of your innermost truth. Chapter 12. Axiom, anchoring the soul in unshakable peace. The sovereign architect from the depths of your innermost truth sketches vibrant hues upon the canvas of existence. A magnificent torrent of authentic action, guided by an eternally discovered purpose, should, by all reason, forge an inner sanctuary impervious to storm. Yet gaze upon the vast tapestry of human experience, and a profound dissonance emerges. Why, then, does the very ground beneath the soul so often tremble? Why do the winds of fleeting circumstance or the tremors of unresolved pasts still threaten to uproot the most sincerely sought intention, scattering the carefully laid colors of purposeful being into a fragmented kaleidoscope of anxiety? The truth of inherent purpose, once glimpsed, is a powerful anchor, but an anchor, however mighty, can only hold if the seabed itself is stable, if the currents do not conspire to fray the mighty chain. How, in a world perpetually shifting like desert sands, can the soul truly be anchored in a peace that defies all external turbulence? This is not merely a question of knowing, but of being. Not a fleeting calm after the storm, but a fundamental structural integrity that prevails through every tempest, every silent pressure, every whispered doubt that seeks to erode the spirit's quiet resolve. We speak of unshakable peace as a destination, a coveted prize, a state achieved through diligent effort or sudden revelation. But what if it is something far more primordial, a birthright forgotten, a fundamental resonance obscured by the cacophony of constant striving? How does one cultivate such an internal bedrock, a core of stillness so profound that even the roiling chaos of the outer world cannot penetrate its sacred precincts? The great ocean, even in its most furious rage, holds abyssal depths of profound quietude. Can the human spirit, mirroring this majestic duality, find its own unmoving deep beneath the surface of its own tumultuous tides? This is the paradox, the enigma we now confront. How to build an inner world so robust, so inherently aligned, that its tranquility becomes an inviolable law, an enduring constant in a universe defined by flux. The sovereign architect designs with eternal materials, but even the most magnificent edifice requires a foundation that can withstand the test of ages. What constitutes this bedrock of an unshakable soul? Is it an absence of conflict, or a mastery over its embrace? A surrender, or a fortified will? These are the questions that ripple through the silent chambers of the soul, demanding an answer that transcends mere intellectual understanding. The path to this profound anchoring is not found in the cessation of all external movement, but in the discovery of an internal stillness so absolute, so pervasive, that it transforms the very nature of motion around it. It is the quest for the eye of the hurricane within the self, a quietude so potent it redefines the very essence of equilibrium, promising a solace not just from the world's demands, but a fundamental realignment with the cosmos itself. The bedrock of an unshakable soul is not found in a realm devoid of shadows, but forged within the crucible where light and darkness meet. It is not an absence of the tempest, but the very eye discovered within its swirling heart. Imagine a colossal lighthouse, its beam cutting through the most violent squalls, not because the storms cease, but because its foundation is sunk deep into the earth, impervious to the ocean's rage. This is the truth of authentic peace. It is a profound understanding that external tranquility is but a fleeting echo, a momentary lull in the world's ceaseless symphony of change. True anchoring emerges from a different kind of architecture. It is the conscious cultivation of an inner sanctuary, a sacred space built brick by meticulous brick of awareness and acceptance. Here, the soul learns to cease its desperate clinging to the illusion of control over the outer currents. Instead, it turns inward, discovering a vast, silent reservoir of strength. This is not a surrender born of weakness, but a potent, deliberate embrace. It is the warrior who stands unmoving amidst the fray, not because the arrows are no longer flying, but because their trajectory has been observed, understood, and their power to pierce the deepest self-rendered null. The mastery over conflict is not its eradication, but the transformation of one's relationship to it. It is learning to ride the waves of challenge rather than being dragged beneath them. The soul, thus anchored, becomes like a mighty oak. It does not escape the winds, but roots itself deeper, its branches swaying in a majestic dance of resilience. Every gale, every downpour, rather than tearing it asunder, serves only to strengthen its core, to etch its resolve more profoundly into the very fabric of its being. This internal stillness is not a void, but a vibrant, pulsating presence. It is the quiet hum of the cosmos made manifest within, a subtle vibration that harmonizes the discordant notes of the world. From this vantage point, the ceaseless demands, the urgent clamor of existence, begin to recede. They become distant echoes, observed without judgment, without the need for immediate reaction. This liberation from reactive entanglement is the cornerstone of unshakable peace. It is the breath taken in the midst of chaos, the space created between stimulus and response, a space vast enough to contain the universe. Within that sacred pause, the soul realigns, not just with its own truth, but with the eternal rhythm of creation itself, finding its true north amidst any storm. This is the promise of equilibrium, not just a respite, but a fundamental belonging. Consider the ceaseless current of existence, that torrent which often threatens to sweep the unprepared spirit away. We have spoken of the anchor within, the quiet hum of the cosmos made manifest in the deepest chambers of your being. Now, let us draw this truth closer, allowing its radiant light to illuminate the very fabric of your daily reality. For this is not a distant philosophical ideal, confined to hushed contemplation, but a living, breathing capacity waiting to awaken within you. Imagine, if you will, the relentless drumbeat of demands that orchestrate your waking hours. The unexpected email that arrives like a sudden gust of wind, threatening to derail your carefully planned trajectory. The sharp words spoken in haste, capable of fracturing the serene surface of your composure. The looming deadline, a shadow stretching long across your mind, stirring the ancient anxieties of inadequacy. In these moments, the common human tendency is to be caught in the current, to react, to contract, to feel the immediate sting of urgency or irritation. The heart quickens, the breath shallows, and the mind spins into a vortex of defensive thought or desperate action. This is the unanchored state, where the tempest outside dictates the weather within. Yet, from the vantage point of this unshakable peace, something profound shifts. It is not that the external world suddenly ceases its clamor. The emails still arrive, the words may still be sharp, the deadlines remain. The revelation lies in the transformation of your relationship to these forces. No longer are you a fragile skiff, tossed helplessly upon the waves. Instead, you become the deep-sea vessel, whose surface may ripple with the storm, but whose keel remains steady, anchored in the silent, immense calm far below. This internal recalibration grants you a new kind of sovereignty, when the unexpected challenge surfaces, you find a sacred pause blossoming in the space between stimulus and response. It is a breath taken not of fear, but of profound awareness. Here, in this luminous interstitial space, you are not merely reacting, you are observing. You perceive the situation with the clarity of a mountain peak, viewing the swirling mists below, recognizing the impermanence of the storm without being consumed by its chaos. The urgent clamor becomes a distant echo, yes, but more importantly, it becomes data, information received and processed without the immediate entanglement of emotional turbulence. This is where the soul realigns, not just in esoteric meditation, but in the very crucible of everyday life. In a difficult conversation, you do not immediately raise your voice or retreat in fear. You listen, not just to the words, but to the undercurrents, holding your own center amidst the friction. When faced with a decision fraught with uncertainty, instead of succumbing to panic, you access an inner wellspring of intuitive wisdom, a calm knowing that guides you toward your true north, even when the external compass spins wildly. This isn't detachment, it is profound engagement from a place of unshakable groundedness. It is the unwavering lighthouse amidst the tempest, offering not an escape from the storm, but a steadfast beam of guidance through it. This is the promise of equilibrium made real, not merely a respite from the world's demands, but a fundamental belonging to a deeper, more resilient self, capable of weathering any gale with an innate, tranquil strength. The silent reverberation of this truth now settles, a final echo in the chambers of understanding. It is the realization that peace is not found in the cessation of all external tumult, but in the unwavering core forged within. For too long, the seeker has navigated the currents of the world, chasing a quiet shore that always seemed to recede. Here, at the precipice of this axiom's full revelation, the landscape shifts. One discovers that the sanctuary is not a distant isle, but the very vessel one inhabits, crafted from resilient spirit and conscious will. Imagine a mountain, ancient and resolute, its peak piercing the tempest's fury, its foundations reaching into the earth's molten heart. The winds may shriek, the rain may lash, but the mountain remains. Its peace is not immunity to the storm, but its unyielding presence through it. This is the nature of the anchored soul. It is a state where the external cacophony transforms into a mere backdrop, an impermanent ripple on the surface of an infinite ocean of calm. This profound engagement, this unshakable groundedness, does not sever the connection to the world's pain or its challenges. Instead, it redefines the very nature of that connection. One moves not as a leaf blown by every gust, but as a deep-rooted oak, its branches swaying in harmony, its trunk unbent. Intuitive wisdom, once a fleeting whisper, becomes a resonant chord guiding through the densest fog. The fear that once constricted the breath now dissipates, replaced by a spacious awareness, an innate knowing that illuminates the path forward, even when the human eye can perceive only shadows. The promise of equilibrium, then, is not merely a respite. It is a fundamental recalibration of being. It is the deep, tranquil strength that permeates the very essence of existence, allowing one to weather any gale, not by resisting its force, but by embodying a resilience that transcends it. This is a belonging to a deeper self, not apart from the world, but intrinsically connected to its pulsing heart, yet unbound by its fleeting anxieties. The lighthouse does not flee the darkness. It stands, a beacon of guidance, its light unwavering, reminding all who gaze upon it that even amidst the grandest tempest, an unshakable peace prevails. This truth, now illuminated, prepares the ground for the profound alchemy that lies ahead, for a journey beyond mere endurance, into a realm of deliberate creation. Conclusion: the genesis of unwavering stillness. The journey began in the clamor, amidst the fractured echoes of a world in perpetual motion. Each axiom, a chisel of insight, has meticulously sculpted away the calcified layers of assumption, the brittle shells of conditioned response. You once perceived a reality dictated by external currents, a tempest of events that threatened to capsize the fragile vessel of self. Yet a profound alchemy has occurred. The external remains, its dynamic interplay unaltered, yet its tyrannical grip has loosened. You see not chaos but intricate patterns, not helplessness but the profound weave of choice and consequence. The mirror of existence no longer reflects a distorted image of fear, but a deeper, more resonant truth, that the true horizon of peace lies not in the absence of storms, but in the unyielding strength of the anchor within. The world's cacophony has not vanished, yet your ears are now attuned to a quieter, more profound symphony beneath its surface. This recalibration is not merely survival, it is apotheosis. You are liberated from the tyranny of reactive existence, no longer a leaf buffeted by every passing gust, but the deeply rooted oak, its branches swaying with grace, its trunk unyielding. The mastery achieved is not dominion over others, but sovereignty over self. It is the profound capacity to stand, like the ancient lighthouse, amidst the grandest tempest, its light unwavering, a beacon not just for others, but as the enduring truth of your own being. The fleeting anxieties of the world can swirl and rage, yet they cannot touch the core, for the soul is now anchored, not to shifting sands, but to the very bedrock of existence. This is the realm of deliberate creation, where peace is not a fragile outcome, but the fertile ground from which all purpose, all meaning, all authentic action springs forth. You have not merely endured, you have transcended, becoming the calm eye within every storm. The stillness abides.